Chapter 302. 2 minutes in 1. Sorry for the delay. Both the mysterious yang pill and the minor yin pill were nourishing medicines that could be used by men and women. They could be refined with ordinary herbs and belonged to the most common type of medicine. Even ordinary people would not have a problem taking them. But from the gathering qi pill onwards, they were high-grade medicines that Xian practitioners and martial artists could use. The gathering spirit pill, also known as the devil's heart pill, when taken during cultivation, the user's mental strength would be highly concentrated, and the user would be fully immersed in cultivation. This was how Du Zhu avoided most of the possible situations of qi deviation. This function sounded simple, but in reality, it was not a trivial matter. It was definitely not easy to obtain, and there was no market for it. Martial artists could be unafraid of external things, and they could be unafraid of pain. But the biggest obstacle was the devil's heart. Very few people were unafraid of it. Who knew how many high-level martial artists were attacked by the devil's heart when they were trying to break through, resulting in a lifetime of tragedy? The higher the cultivation, the more severe the devil's heart's backlash. But with this devil's heart pill, it would basically eliminate the possibility of what happened to Du Zhu. This was like holding a life-saving talisman in one's hand. If this devil's heart pill were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar in the Xian continent. The bloody strife that such a small pill could cause would be extremely tragic. Even if it was not as tragic as the fight for the level 9 Xian Dan, it would not be much different. The 100 herb pill, as the name suggests, was an elixir that specialized in curing all kinds of poisons. Except for some strange poisons that would kill upon contact with blood, and mixed poisons, the 100 herb pill was almost non-toxic. The journey to Tian Fa was long, and there were countless poisonous insects, miasma, and ferocious beasts along the way. This 100 herb pill was an essential medicine, and it was definitely a great safeguard for the army. So, Jun Moxie chose it first. As for the meridian unblocking pill, Jun Moxie gave it another name, 10 years pill. Because, according to his experiments, after taking this meridian unblocking pill, perhaps due to the difference between Xian qi and internal energy, it could not open the meridians of a Xian practitioner, but it could increase the cultivation of Xian qi by about 10 years. And this increase in cultivation of Xian qi would never disappear. In other words, this kind of medicinal pill was able to forcibly raise a profound practitioner's battle prowess. Moreover, it was a miraculous medicine that could raise a profound practitioner's battle prowess by a large margin in a short period of time. If they had this along with the inner devil pill, the strength of the 300 guards that Jun Moxie had personally trained would definitely rise to a whole new level in an instant. Of course, with his second level of the art of fortune, there were still some dawn that he could refine, but the rest were mostly facial nourishing dawn, spirit cleansing dawn, and the like. Although they all had their own uses, to the current Jun Moxie, they were not urgently needed, and were definitely not his first choice, so he chose to ignore them for now. At this moment, the most important thing was to increase the strength of the entire Jun family. Sitting cross-legged in the pagoda and facing the simple and unadorned furnace of good fortune, Jun Moxie circulated his energy to calm his excited emotions. As his emotions calmed down, the originally turbulent flow of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune slowly turned into a stream of calm water. Suddenly, he felt his mind become exceptionally clear. "Hey!" Jun Moxie shouted in a deep voice. His hands drew a circle in the air, and with a dazzling speed, he quickly pinched out several strange hand seals. What was strange was that every time he pinched out a hand seal in the air, a strange hand seal would appear in the air and fly into the furnace of good fortune one by one, boom. The flame of primal chaos, which had been slowly burning under the furnace of good fortune, suddenly burst into flames. In a split second, the jet-black flames sprang up and enveloped the entire furnace of good fortune. At the same time, Jun Moxie raised his hand and pointed his index finger straight at the furnace of good fortune. With a loud bang, the furnace of good fortune began to spin in the air. Then, a seven-colored brilliance appeared on the body of the furnace of good fortune, reflecting countless strange patterns. Suddenly, all the patterns disappeared, and the seven-colored brilliance disappeared. The furnace of good fortune was still spinning in the air, but with a buzzing sound, the lid of the furnace flew into the air. June Moxie's empty right hand waved, and a bag of medicines fell into the furnace. In an instant, the entire space was filled with a rich medicinal fragrance. The fragrance disappeared as soon as the lid of the furnace of good fortune fell, and the flame of primal chaos rose sharply. Then, June Moxie's outstretched finger that was pointing at the furnace of good fortune was wrapped in a pitch-black flame. June Moxie felt the spiritual energy in his body surge out of his fingertips like the opening of a great river. Almost at the beginning of the process, June Dashao, who had been smooth sailing all this time, finally began to complain for the first time today. "Oh my God, is this alchemy or is this blood extraction? This feeling is simply the terrifying taste of being sucked dry in a split second." Refining a small alchemy pill actually requires such a high intensity and large amount of spiritual energy. And this is only refining the most basic and common alchemy pill. If I were to refine a precious alchemy pill with a higher starting point, wouldn't I directly die from exhaustion? This is too exaggerated. Damn it, I have read The Journey to the West. Look at how easy it was for the Taisheng Lao Jun to refine alchemy pills. All he had to do was stroke his beard and flick his horsetail whisk. Then, an immortal pill came as a breeze. Moreover, it was the kind that could bring one back from the dead, make one immortal, and become an immortal. But, why is it so difficult for me? I only want some ordinary stuff that can heal injuries, cure poisons, and increase my cultivation by a few years. Is there a need to suck my soul dry like this? June Moxie grumbled in his heart. But his spirit and hands did not dare to be negligent. He did his best to maintain the stability of his mind. He allowed the spiritual energy in his body to surge out like a river. After a long time, bang! The furnace of good fortune let out a loud sound and fell back to the ground. The black chaos spiritual flame also returned to its original color and continued to burn slowly. As for June Dashao, he was completely exhausted. He did not even have the strength to move a finger. He panted heavily and felt the spiritual energy from the Hongjun Pagoda crazily surging into his meridians. He felt as if he had run 5 kilometers with a huge rock on his back. He wished he could stick out his tongue to catch his breath. If not for the huge amount of spiritual energy from the Hongjun Pagoda, the exhausted June Dashao would have fallen into a deep sleep. The exhaustion of the body was secondary. The most important thing was the exhaustion of the soul. If it was not replenished in time, it would lead to serious consequences. After a long time, he finally felt the spiritual energy in his meridians fill up a little. June Moxie struggled to crawl up and congealed some spiritual energy. The furnace of good fortune opened with the help of the spiritual energy. June Moxie stretched his head out to take a look. His hands and feet started to tremble. Inside the furnace of good fortune, besides a small pile of ashes, there was nothing else. "I'll fuck your uncle." Hitman June was flabbergasted for a long time. He then cursed angrily, "I don't believe that I can't refine a pill with my talent. It's just an ordinary pill, and I still have to refine it a second time." He sat cross-legged, began to absorb the spiritual energy, and began to operate the art of good fortune. Then, crap! Hitman June couldn't believe his eyes as he looked at the result of the second attempt. "It's actually, okay, I'll fight you. Let's see who's the best between us." The cycle repeated itself, bang. Crap! I don't believe that I can't refine this trash. If 10 times isn't enough, I'll refine it 100 times, 1,000 times. He cursed angrily. Then, he began to vent his anger. Then, he sat cross-legged, began to operate the art of good fortune, and the cycle repeated itself. The unbearable cursing and the hysterical venting began once more. He didn't know how many times he had done it, but finally, "Wah ha ha ha. I'll fuck your 6th uncle." You trash, I'll turn you into ashes. Why aren't you changing? Ah. You bastard. I won't recognize you if you change your attitude. Fuck, motherfucker, you're evil, can you be more evil than me? Humph. Inside the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Dashao looked like a beggar. No, Jun Dashao's appearance was worse than a beggar's. His face had turned green, and he looked like a zombie. His whole body was trembling as if he was having an epileptic fit. His chicken claw-like black hands were clutching a sparkling and translucent pill. He was laughing wildly, jumping up and down as if he had gone mad. Jun Mo Xia clenched his teeth as he looked at the pill in his hand. He had an impulse to throw it on the ground, and then stomp on it a few more times. Damn it. You've made me suffer so much, and you've been torturing me for so long. But, if I were to disregard you after I've succeeded, and then trample you to pieces, how satisfying would that be? How satisfying would that be? How comfortable would that be? Jun Dashao steeled his heart, but in the end, he couldn't bear to do it. Crap. My brain would have been short-circuited if I'd really crushed it. I'll let you be awesome. Wait until I've swallowed you into my stomach. My intestines will move, and I'll digest you. You'll become the best punishment for you. As he continued to mutter curses to himself, he carefully took out a small jade bottle. As if he was serving his ancestor, he carefully placed the rubbish in his mouth into the bottle. In the end, there was only one left in his hand. Without thinking, he swallowed it into his mouth. He chewed on it a few times, and only swallowed it down after chewing it to mush. It seems like the effect is not bad. Jun Moxie savored the taste of the mysterious yang pill in his mouth. His face was full of aftertaste. Looking at the medicinal ingredients that he had brought in, Jun Moxie's face turned bitter. How long would he have to practice for? Counting the ingredients of the mysterious yang pill, there were originally 100 bags. Now, there were only 78 bags left. In other words, he had refined it 22 times. He didn't know if it was luck or coincidence that he had succeeded once. And he had produced exactly 30 pills in one try. If he wanted to equip the entire private army, he would need to succeed at least 10 times. And 10 times of success meant that he would have to try many more times. Fuck. I'm going all out. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth and plopped down on the ground. Once again, he began to accumulate his spiritual energy. It had to be said that Jun Moxie's endurance was really strong. It had definitely exceeded the limits of a normal person's tenacity. Other people would not turn back until they hit the wall. But Jun Moxie did not turn back even after hitting the wall. Even after hitting the wall, he did not turn back. He was a classic example of someone who would hit the wall, but still want to smash the mountain. With Jun Moxie's current spiritual energy and the assistance of the second level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, after activating the furnace of good fortune and the flame of primal chaos, he could at most complete one round of refining. After that, the spiritual energy in his body would be completely exhausted. It would not be an exaggeration to say that not even a drop would be left. What kind of uncomfortable feeling would a Xian or warrior feel when their Xian qi and internal energy are drained? It would be similar to the feeling of having one's head heavy and feet light, cold hands and feet, and having one's mind muddled. Moreover, these symptoms would be magnified by 10 or 20 times. This statement was absolutely not an exaggeration. In addition, one would clearly feel that one's soul would tremble in the depths of one's sea of consciousness. In fact, it would feel as if one's soul would fly away and scatter at any time. It would be an absolutely hair-raising experience. It was also a stroll in front of the gates of hell. An average person wouldn't be willing to try a second time after experiencing this kind of tempering. Moreover, they would feel pain and lingering fear every time they thought about it. Even a person with strong willpower would reach their limit after trying 3 or 5 times. However, Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao had succeeded 22 times in his first attempt. The most awesome thing was that the first 21 attempts had been a failure. Moreover, Looking at his determination, it seemed that he would continue to refine if he didn't succeed after 22 attempts. Who would dare to say that they were more tenacious than the hitman June? More demonic? Not to mention the purity of the spiritual energy, even the tempering of one's mind was no small matter. It was an absolutely unimaginable matter. The current situation was that he had finally succeeded in refining this pill. Moreover, Jun Dashao still wasn't willing to give up. In fact, it seemed as if he was going to use up all the medicinal ingredients in one spurt of energy, such an abnormal degree. Even if a certain alchemy grandmaster in the cultivation world saw it, he would immediately pass out with his eyes rolled back. This was a monster, or perhaps it should be said that he was an evil being. Jun Moxie naturally didn't know about this. Even if he knew, he wouldn't have cared. He was in high spirits as he continued to refine pills. Then, he would put the refined pills into a small jade bottle with a miserly expression on his face. Each jade bottle could hold 100 pills. One bottle was full. Then another bottle was full again, and then another bottle. Perhaps it was because of his previous failures. The current Jun Moxie was unexpectedly very skillful in refining pills. Looking at this posture, it seemed as if he was the reincarnation of the old lord. Perhaps it was because of his previous failures. Now that he had experience, the failure rate was very low. Basically, he would succeed in refining pills every 3 times. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Jun Moxie's spiritual energy recovery speed was getting faster and faster. In the beginning, he would be as tired as a dead dog after refining a furnace. Now, he would only need to take a few heavy breaths after refining a furnace. Then, he would completely recover after meditating for a while. Then, he would be able to start the next furnace. This speed had increased by more than 2 or 3 times. The efficiency could be said to be quite high. This also meant that through this round of pill refining, not to mention the final number of pills that could be formed, there would be great benefits to Jun Moxie's consciousness and his spiritual energy. Moreover, it was a huge and far-reaching benefit. Especially after experiencing those 21 consecutive failures. The condensation of Jun Moxie's spiritual energy and the strength of his consciousness had already grown to an extremely high level. At the moment when he finally succeeded, the sudden burst of ease and strength showed that Jun Moxie had made great progress in this round of pill refining. However, Jun Moxie himself didn't know any of this. He didn't even pay attention to this aspect at all. Jun Dashao was in a transcendent state of selflessness, thoughtlessness, and thoughtlessness. He was completely focused. Right now, his mind was filled with only one thought: refining pills. Refining pills. Refining pills, refining pills without a care for anything else. There's no time, time is too tight, I have to make the best use of every moment to refine pills. His expression, from the initial excitement of seeing the pills, gradually became calm and natural. Then, it became as if it was only natural, and then it became stupefied. In the end, it was as if he was having a normal meal, as if he was eating the most ordinary cabbage, and it was the cheapest kind of cabbage. The kind that could be bought with a dime for a few caddies. I'm sick of eating it. When it was time to refine the meridian connecting pill, a huge discovery finally woke Jun Moxie up. Fuck. The spiritual energy in my body actually supported me to refine 3 batches of pills in a row, and I actually didn't feel tired. What's going on? Is it because this pill doesn't consume as much spiritual energy as the previous ones? That's not right, these pills are of the same level, and this meridian connecting pill is the most difficult to refine in this level, and it consumes the most spiritual energy. I remember when I was refining the first batch of pills, wasn't I already exhausted before I could persist to the end? Why is it now? Jun Moxie's thoughts moved, and he immediately restrained his spiritual energy to look inside his body. With one look, he was immediately shocked. In his meridians, the spiritual energy that was originally in a formless and shadowless state, when he broke through the first layer, he gradually felt it. When he broke through the second layer, it had already turned into a faint mist. Now, although it was still in the shape of a mist, it was much thicker than before. In fact, it even had a slight feeling of solidification. Could it be that I've only refined pills for a while? How did my spiritual energy increase so quickly? How could June Moxie know that he was only refining pills? With this method of refining pills, every time the spiritual energy was exhausted, he would only replenish it. And at that time, the pure spiritual energy from the Hongjun Pagoda would flow into his meridians without any obstruction, and the transformation would be completed in an instant. At the same time, when it recovered, it would more or less improve on the original foundation. And he had already gone through this cycle who knew how many times. Moreover, every single time, he would go all out from the start, tossing and turning with an overload. It could be said that if he did not have the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Dashao would have died long ago. But now, not only did he have the Hongjun Pagoda, but his body was also inside the Hongjun Pagoda. This brought him great benefits, benefits that could not be described with words. His current strength had more than doubled compared to before he entered the Hongjun Pagoda to refine pills. If measured by Xian Qi, the current Jun Dashao had at least reached the middle stage of Yu Xian, and could break through at any time. If using the art of unlocking heaven's fortune as an example, he had already reached the middle stage of the second level. He only needed one more big step to reach the peak of the second level, and he would be able to break through to the third level. And now, it had been less than half a month since he had broken through to the second level. In other words, during this period of time when he was refining pills, he had completely immersed himself in it, and had raised his cultivation by 2 levels. A whole 2 levels of improvement, to an ordinary person, was something that they would not even dare to think about. Xian Qi cultivation, under the silver level, was relatively fast to advance. But once one broke through to the silver level, every step would be more difficult than the last. Any martial art was like this: the higher the level, the harder it was to break through. Just like the 2 Tian Fa kings of the Tian Fa forest. Their innate talents far surpassed the ordinary people, and they could be said to be blessed by the heavens. However, they had been stuck at their bottleneck for decades, and there was no sign of a breakthrough. In these decades, they had also been improving every day, but they had not been able to break through. And once Jun Moxie had the possibility of helping them break through, they would crazily follow him. This was a clear indication of the difficulty of breaking through. It was definitely not something that an ordinary person could imagine. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh, and his mind was in a state of ecstasy. He felt an inexplicable sense of relaxation, and instantly felt a sharp pain in his head. Ever since entering the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie had long forgotten how much time had passed. He also did not know how long he had been here. But at this moment, his head was incomparably painful, and his whole body was powerless. Although his qi was still abundant, his body had no strength left. At the same time, the strong feeling of hunger in his stomach made Jun Moxie feel some pain. How long does it take to not eat to have this kind of feeling? Moreover, I haven't drunk any water. Looking at the ground beside him, Jun Moxie was once again shocked by himself. Rows and rows of jade bottles were neatly arranged. Counting them, oh my god, Jun Moxie sucked in a breath of cold air. This is really refined by me. Fuck. I'm so abnormal, I'm really not a human. 5 bottles of mysterious yang pills, 3 bottles of minor yin pills, 6 bottles of demonic heart pills, 15 bottles of 100 solutions pills, and 8 bottles of unblocking meridians pills. Fuck. This brother is really too great, too awesome, too handsome, too. There are no adjectives that can describe this brother's strength. These pills are all strength. Once these are given to the 300 bodyguards, to what extent will their overall combat strength increase? This is definitely an extremely terrifying matter. Jun Moxie praised himself as he hurriedly rushed out of the Hongjun Pagoda. If I don't go out, such a great person like me will starve to death. But Jun Moxie did not know that he had originally planned to refine pills for the entire night, but had instead gone crazy and stayed in the Hongjun Pagoda for 3 days and 3 nights. Moreover, no one knew about this, and this almost caused a huge uproar. The young master of the June family had once again disappeared from his own home without any reason, and this time, there was no trace of him, and he had disappeared without a trace. This was also the longest time he had disappeared. The solitary eagle had just left, and June Moxie had also disappeared. What did this mean? He could not help but think too much. The June residence was somewhat chaotic, and everyone was in a hurry. Something big has happened. This is bad. Chapter 303. June Zhantian wasn't worried on the first day. After all, June Moxie's strength wasn't weak, and he was brimming with confidence. He even said that he could protect himself even if the 8 great masters were to attack him, so what could possibly happen? Maybe this guy is hiding somewhere and working hard to make a great-grandson, but on the second day, June Zhantian and June Mo Xia couldn't help but become anxious. What's going on? He hasn't been home for 2 days and 2 nights, and this has never happened before. Could it be that he's having too much fun? On the 3rd day, he couldn't keep his cool. He claimed to be able to protect himself from the 8 great masters, but this information hasn't been verified yet. What if June Zhantian became anxious and issued an order, and the capital was once again under martial law? At the same time, the June family's secret forces were mobilized, and Hai Qinfeng's Jin Yang gang was also mobilized. For a time, the ruffians and the army joined hands, and the scoundrels and generals joined hands. Jun Wui personally commanded the search, and every suspicious place was searched several times. Jun Wuyi's complexion was unusually ugly, and this search was exceptionally vicious and merciless. Anyone who doesn't agree with me will be executed first. June Zhantian brazenly said, "Damn it, even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up. Search carefully for me. If anyone dares to disobey, I'll kill them. If anyone dares to make a sound, I'll break their legs, and then they'll lose their heads." The most miserable place was the Spirit Fog Lake, and the most miserable place was the Ni Chang Pavilion. There was no doubt about it. Lady Yu was said to be performing her zither skills on a tour, and all the major brothels were scrambling to hire her, but she hadn't even completed half of her tour when Jun Wui sent his army to detain her. Reason? Why do I need a reason to detain you? The Ni Chang Pavilion had a relationship with the second prince, and almost everyone was well aware of this fact. But this time, it was said that the second prince had sent his chief strategist, Mr. Fang Bowen, to plead for leniency, hoping that the Jun family would give him some face, and even release Lady Yu alone. However, Jun Wuyi's reply was only one word: get lost. It was said that the highly respected Mr. Fang had a seizure on the spot. It was said that the highly respected Mr. Fang Bowen was so angry that he went into a fit. Young Master Jun, who was dressed even worse than the beggars, appeared in his own courtyard. Like a reincarnated hungry ghost, he ran like a stray dog, like a fish that had escaped the net. With a speed close to the speed of light, he ran into the Jun family's main kitchen. This caused the little lowly Ku, who had been crying for the past few days, to jump in fright. Before she could turn around in surprise, she saw that her young master had disappeared once again. The 2 women followed the direction in which June Moxie had disappeared, and when they arrived at the main kitchen, they were shocked. Young Master Jun's clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, his face was pale, and he had 2 dark circles under his eyes. His hands were like chicken claws, and his boots were so shabby that even his toes could be seen. Even though he was in such a sorry state, he did not slow down in the slightest. He moved as fast as lightning, grabbing a steamed fish with his left hand and shoving it into his mouth. Then, he pulled out a complete fish bone from the other side of his mouth. There was a big lump of beef in his right hand, and he kept sending it into his mouth without chewing at all. In front of him was a bowl of soup. Occasionally, he would choke and let out a strange cry. Then, he would lower his head, and like a whale sucking in water, he would smash his head into the big bowl. On the ground was a pile of bones, fish bones, and meat bones. The chubby chefs in the kitchen felt as if they had been struck by lightning, and stared blankly at this young master who looked like a reincarnated hungry ghost. Their fat faces twitched, and they couldn't believe that he could eat so much. Damn it! Even a pig, no, even a wild boar would not be able to eat so much. And it can't eat so fast. This eating speed. I can't take it anymore, I'm getting dizzy just by looking at it. Guan Qinghan hurriedly rushed over with Ku'er. She was very angry in her heart. You debauchee brat. Don't you know how to inform your family first? You've been gone for 3 days, and there's no news from you. Do you want me to die from anxiety? She had the mentality of an elder sister-in-law, and wanted to teach her younger brother-in-law a lesson. But when she arrived, she was dumbstruck, and couldn't say a word. This table manners. Miss Guan's eyes widened, and she covered her small mouth. Her face had an expression as if she had seen a ghost. This was the first time that the iceberg beauty Guan Qinghan, who had always been as cold as ice, had shown such an expression on her face. Ku'er's delicate and charming mouth was wide open. She had a startled expression on her face, and it seemed as if 2 big duck eggs could be stuffed into her mouth. Finally, Jun Moxie sighed in satisfaction, and smashed his head down. The remaining half of the soup disappeared with a whoosh, and revealed the smooth and white bottom of the pot. He lifted his leg, and kicked away the various bones that had almost buried his ankle. Jun Moxie let out a satisfied burp, and took out a small and exquisite flying knife. He then started to pick his teeth in a leisurely manner. But when he turned his eyes, he saw that everyone's expression was extremely strange. He couldn't help but ask in bewilderment, "Why are you all looking at me like that? Don't tell me there's a flower growing on my face." Everyone was speechless. Everyone was speechless for a while, and they were still speechless for a long time. It would be strange if they could say anything in the face of such thick skin. "What have you been doing these past few days?" Guan Qinghan was the first to come to her senses. She pretended to be dignified as she interrogated him. "I've been these past few days." "Aha!" Jun Moxie immediately guessed what had happened. He shook his head with a sigh. "I've been very busy. I've been so busy that I'm about to die. How can I be like you? You eat and sleep, sleep and eat. Other than solving your physiological needs, you don't care about anything else." What kind of words were these? Guan Qinghan's face was frosty, and she said fiercely, "What did you say?" "What did I say?" "Ha, I said. Big sister-in-law and Ku'er are getting more and more beautiful. Every time I see you, I don't know what to say. Especially big sister-in-law, you're not only beautiful, but you're also getting younger. When I see big sister-in-law in the future, I really don't have the nerve to call you big sister-in-law. If others don't know, they'll definitely think that you're my younger sister." Jun Moxie hurriedly tried to salvage the situation, and spouted a bunch of flowery words and nonsense. Hearing this, Guan Qinghan and Ku'er were stunned. They knew that out of 10 of this mischievous brat's words, at least 8 of them were fake. But hearing him praise their beauty still made them feel a little happy. They found it both funny and annoying at the same time, and they stared at him speechlessly. After a long while, Guan Qinghan's pretty face was still taut. She said, "When third uncle comes back, you'll have a good time." After saying that, she pulled Ku'er and swaggered away. Guan Qinghan was right. She wasn't exaggerating in the slightest. When Grandpa Jun and Third Master Jun received the news, they immediately rushed back. Facing Jun Dashao, they immediately unleashed a torrent of thunderous anger. Jun Dashao's hair had almost turned silver, and his hair was covered with spittle. The thunderous rain was so intense that Jun Dashao didn't even have the time to show off. After enduring the barrage of curses with great difficulty, he took out a set of pills. One mysterious yang pill, 1 devil's heart pill, and 1 10 years pill. Facing the 2 big shots who had just rained down curses on him, he still had to crazily flatter them. "This thing is indeed a good thing. But it can't be eaten too much. At the very least, it's not suitable to be consumed in large quantities. This mysterious yang pill can be stored for 10 days. Taking it frequently as a health supplement is not a problem. But the 10 years pill is a one-time deal. Only the first pill is effective. Eating too much of it is useless, it's a pure waste. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui pinched the pills with their fingers. The expression on their faces was very incredulous. After all, the effects that Jun Dashao had described were too miraculous. Even the two of them looked at Jun Moxie with a gaze that said, "Who are you trying to fool? These pills can increase one's cultivation by 10 years? That's nonsense." The two of them had the same expression. However, under the protection of Jun Moxie, the two of them swallowed the pills. They finished circulating their energy and stood up. However, they had an almost crazed look on their faces. Feeling the 10 years' worth of cultivation increase within their bodies, the two of them looked at Jun Moxie with green eyes. This kind of expression made Jun Moxie think of the Dark Mountains, a pack of wolves. Such a good thing. How many more of them do you have? Hand them all over to this old man. Hurry up and don't make things difficult for this old man. Do you hear me, you little bastard? This was Grandpa Jun's roar. Grandpa Jun's face was full of excitement. He directly lost his composure. Not only did he speak incoherently, he even grabbed his grandson's clothes, lifted him up, and shook him in the air. He was like a dried salted fish being hung on the eaves of a house. Grandpa Jun was very greedy. Once he opened his mouth, he said in a very overbearing manner, "You see, your grandfather opened his mouth first. Of course, you have to take care of him first. I don't need a lot. Just give me 100 or so bottles. No matter how many there are, you can give them all to your grandfather. Look at him, Jun Wui, Third Master Jun is so generous. He only asked for 100 or so bottles. Do these two of them think that it fell from the sky? Or that they picked it up from the ground? This was a genuine immortal spiritual recipe." Jun Moxie groaned and fainted. This is too shocking. Even if they were picking up dirt from the ground, they would still need to bend down and use some strength. Moreover, this is a pill. Brother, this is not cabbage that can be found everywhere. How could the two of them allow Jun Moxie to pretend to be dead? From the looks of it, with this elixir in front of them, even their grandson and nephew, the only heir of the Jun family, would have to step aside. Grandpa Jun bluntly grabbed Jun Sunshao's cheeks and pulled. Third young Master Jun's face instantly turned into a pig's head. As for Third Master Jun, his methods were relatively gentle. He only pinched his nephew's manhood. There were no repercussions, only a purple patch. Pretending to faint in front of the two of us? You've really misunderstood your little brat's heart, you've made a mistake in your calculations. Jun Dashao screamed as he woke up. He wanted to cry but had no tears. I really don't have any more. I don't have any more even if you beat me to death. Please let me go, who are you trying to fool? I saw you take out a few bottles just now. Isn't it a waste to leave such a good thing in your hands? Quickly hand it over. Are you looking for trouble? Grandpa Jun was very straightforward. He grabbed his grandson's ankles and lifted him up. Then, he shook him violently. It was as if a naughty child had grabbed a ripe jujube tree. The only difference was, one was upside down. Jun Dashao was unable to endure the abuse. So, he finally confessed. Let go. I can't take it anymore. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, okay? Only then did Grandpa Jun put down his hand. Both father and son glared at Jun Moxie like a tiger watching its prey. Jun Dashao crawled up. The first thing he did was to slap his own face. Who asked you to show off again? Look, something happened, right? He knew that this thing was very tempting. In front of this elixir, grandfather, grandson, uncle and nephew had no feelings, Then, he thought about it again. Something is wrong. I made this thing for the June family. So, why am I being treated like a traitor? All kinds of tortures were brought out. The only thing missing was a tiger stool and chilly water. He slowly took out a bottle of mysterious yang pills, a bottle of demon heart pills, a bottle of 100 solutions pills, and a bottle of 10 years pills. He placed them on the table. Then, he spread out his hands. That's all, I don't believe it. Take more, the two of them roared at the same time. I really don't have any more. Jun Dashao's face was full of sincerity. Grandpa, this is enough for 100 people. My master only gave me this much. He thought, what do you want this stuff for? It's just to increase the strength of my trusted subordinates. But, some people aren't that reliable. I'll keep the rest for myself. What? You have enough for 100 people? The two of them found it hard to believe. Even half of such a precious elixir was rare and hard to find. In fact, Third Master Jun was only joking when he said that he needed more than 100 bottles. A bottle of this kind of elixir could only contain 3 to 5 pills. So, how could they not be dumbfounded when they heard Jun Dashao say that these unremarkable bottles contained enough for 100 people? It's true. My master used a lot of his strength to refine these elixirs. Otherwise, how could I have sent people to collect so many herbs? But, my master said that his vitality was greatly damaged this time. So, he won't be able to recover without 3 to 5 months. Moreover, the main ingredients for refining elixirs have been used up. So, he won't be able to refine any more elixirs for a long time. So, these are the only ones left. Be careful when you use them. Jun Dashao naturally had to exaggerate a little. After all, wouldn't he be forced to refine elixirs every day if this father and son pair knew that these elixirs could be mass-produced? The two of them felt that this was quite reasonable. Only an expert like Mosie's master could refine such a divine elixir. So, it was even more reasonable that they couldn't refine more. After all, wouldn't it be child's play if these elixirs could be mass-produced? The two of them reached out and pulled Jun Moxie to the side. Then, they reached out to grab the elixirs. Mine! Mine! Bang! Bang, bang, bang. It was obvious that the two of them were fighting over the ownership of the elixirs. Jun Moxie slipped out of the hall, ignoring the shameless and unscrupulous father and son pair. Anyway, no matter how much they fought, nothing would happen to them. They could do whatever they wanted. He had better go about his own business. Intentionally or unintentionally, Jun Dashao arrived at Guan Qinghan's courtyard. Guan Qinghan was sitting quietly under the flowering tree in the courtyard, quietly admiring the flowers in front of her. Her expression was tranquil, and no one knew what she was thinking about. She clearly heard Jun Moxie's footsteps, but she still didn't have any intention of turning around. What's the matter? An indifferent voice asked. It's nothing much. Just a few elixirs. They're pretty good. Try them and see if they taste good. Jun Moxie laughed dryly. Oh. Guan Qinghan slowly turned around. Lengleng looked at him indifferently. What kind of elixirs? Just a few elixirs that I got. They're very effective. Do you dare to eat them? Jun Moxie almost blurted out the two words in his heart. He thought about it, but he didn't dare to say it. Why wouldn't I dare? Afraid that you'll poison me? Guan Qinghan smiled unexpectedly. Immediately, Jun Moxie's eyes widened. The frosty beauty suddenly broke into a smile. It was breathtaking, shocking, and unexpected, although you, Jun Moxie, Jun Dashao, are still somewhat unbearable, but after this period of time, I know that you're not the kind of person who relies on despicable means. Besides, I'm still your sister-in-law. Guan Qinghan reached out and took the 3 elixirs from Jun Moxie's hand. Shaoyin Pill, Inner Demon Pill, and 10 Years Pill. It was the quota for women. She glanced at June Moxie indifferently. Without the slightest hesitation, she raised her head and swallowed the elixir. June Moxie glared at her. Just as he was about to tell her to wait until she was practicing, Guan Qinghan had already swallowed the elixir. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Looking at Guan Qinghan swallowing his elixir without any doubt, Jun Dashao suddenly felt a wave of regret. If I knew that this sister trusted me so much, why didn't I concoct an aphrodisiac? What a blunder. Bah, this must be the thoughts of the former Mo. I'm so pure, how could I be that kind of person? Guan Qinghan had just swallowed the elixir. She was about to ask what kind of elixir it was and what kind of effect it had. Suddenly, she felt a burst of gentle heat gushing up from her dantian. Her entire body felt warm and comfortable. Then, the Xian energy in her body started to circulate on its own. It was like the waves of a great river crashing against her meridians. The warm current in her dantian was constantly emitting new hot energy to fill her meridians, and transform into exceptionally pure Xian energy. The elixir that June Moxie had given her had the miraculous effect of enhancing her strength. Guan Qinghan was incomparably shocked to discover this. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful for her own recklessness. This was a critical moment. She was at the peak of Silver Xian, and was about to break through to Gold Xian. So, she could feel the enormous medicinal power of the elixir after taking the elixir. Breaking through to Gold Xian was imminent. But, she was outside at this critical moment. There was no one to protect her, and there was only her brother-in-law by her side. Why didn't this brat explain it clearly? How could this thing be so careless? I thought it was just some ordinary candy. However, Guan Qinghan didn't have the time to think about it. The enormous and extremely pure medicinal power of the elixir had already filled her limbs and bones. It was steadily advancing towards the Gold Xian realm. She felt a burst of discomfort all over her body, and her consciousness started to blur. Guan Qinghan's cultivation was still too low. She was only at the peak of Silver Xian. She was even inferior to Jun Dashao. With Grandpa Jun and Jun Wui's Tian Xian cultivation, they could naturally consume this 10 years pill without any qualms. They could also endure the impact of the elixir and use it to increase their cultivation. They wouldn't even feel any difference. That was because their foundation was deep enough. However, Guan Qinghan couldn't. There was a difference of more than 10 levels between her and these two men. She had only cultivated for 10 years. But now, she had suddenly gained 10 years worth of cultivation. It was almost the total amount of Xian Qi she had ever cultivated. Moreover, it was far purer. Moreover, she had never experienced June Moxie's cruel training. How could she persevere? She had already consumed the Devil's Heart pill. Otherwise, she would have gone berserk long ago. Guan Qinghan felt as if her entire body was about to explode. Her consciousness was also gradually blurring. She couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. Could it be that this life is going to end in such an inexplicable manner? Her brother-in-law, Jun Moxie, had finally gotten better. He had even given her a few heaven and earth elixirs. It was clear that Jun Moxie had already turned over a new leaf. Moreover, he was also quite concerned about her. However, she had never expected that her body's endurance would be far too weak. She would actually die from the nourishment of these heaven and earth elixirs. Guan Qinghan couldn't help but feel a trace of amusement. There was also a faint feeling of reluctance in her heart. If it had been a few months ago, death might not have made her feel anything. It might even be a kind of release. But now, where did this trace of reluctance come from? The corners of Guan Qinghan's mouth curled into a melancholic smile. She silently said in her heart, "Goodbye." Then, she closed her eyes. However, just as she closed her eyes, she opened them in shock. Her eyes were filled with horror. Guan Qinghan suddenly remembered that, with her status, the most appropriate thing to say at the moment of her death was, "I'm coming," and not, "Goodbye." Goodbye. Who am I going to say goodbye to? Who am I unable to let go of in my heart? Guan Qinghan didn't have time to think further. Suddenly, a warm palm gently but firmly touched the middle of her back. Then, a cool and refreshing strength penetrated into her body. Guan Qinghan's blurry consciousness instantly became clear. It felt as if she had fallen into a cold pond on a hot summer day. She felt a burst of bone-chilling pleasure, then, a pure power slowly flowed out from that warm palm, and flowed into her meridians. It guided the violent flow of energy that had been triggered by the elixir, and methodically passed through her meridians. That flow of energy could be said to be extremely violent. She had been completely unable to control it. But, it had become obedient as soon as this warm power appeared. It seemed as if it would obediently go wherever this warm power wanted it to go. A loud bang resounded in Guan Qinghan's mind. She could clearly feel that an indescribable meridian had suddenly opened up. And, her consciousness had suddenly entered into a whole new realm, a whole new world. With the help of this hand, Guan Qinghan had finally broken through to the Gold Xian realm in one fell swoop. The one who had lent a helping hand was naturally Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao. Guan Qinghan was panic-stricken. She didn't have any experience. However, Jun Moxie understood that the elixir he had refined was strong. But, its attribute wasn't too overbearing. Moreover, it had the Devil's Heart pill as a supplement. So, it wouldn't be fatal. Even if Guan Qinghan lost consciousness, she would be fine after lying down for a few days. Then, she would be able to advance her cultivation. However, this was a great opportunity for him to take advantage of her. Jun Dashao wasn't a gentleman. Wouldn't it be a pity to let this opportunity slip by? Helping others is the basis of happiness. He gently placed his palm on Guan Qinghan's back. Although they were separated by 2 layers of clothing, Guan Qinghan's cultivation was at the peak of Silver Xian. So, she had considerable resistance to cold and heat. So, she naturally wouldn't wear too much. This led to the young master Jun's palm touching her back, and he immediately felt a soft and smooth sensation. It was as if he was caressing a piece of flawless jade. It was so comfortable, so soul-pleasing, so. Chapter 304. Jun Dashao's mind was whirling with a lot of muddled thoughts. Then, he remembered to circulate his internal energy to help. Guan Qinghan slowly woke up. Her entire body felt comfortable, as if she was about to soar. She couldn't help but feel overjoyed in her heart. I've finally broken through to the Gold Xian realm. This means that I've finally gained considerable strength. I'm no longer a useless person who needs to be protected everywhere. The impulsive feeling of joy had finally calmed down. Guan Qinghan then felt that the palm that had helped her so much was still on her back. It was just that the palm was no longer channeling his internal energy to her. But, she could still feel the warmth of that palm. What a big and warm hand. Who was it that helped me? That kid. Jun Moxie doesn't have such a high level of cultivation. She turned her head to look out of curiosity. She saw that her brother-in-law, Jun Moxie, was sitting cross-legged behind her with his eyes closed. His palm was still in the same posture, and was still stuck on her back. How is this possible? It's really him. Guan Qinghan felt a wave of dizziness. Since when did this kid have such a high level of cultivation? Could it be, but, it seems that he's not moving at all. He must have expended a lot of energy to channel his internal energy to break through to the next stage, right? No wonder he can't open his eyes now. It seems that he's unbearably tired. Just as she was thinking about this, she suddenly felt that the palm on her back moved a little. Then, the 5 fingers moved a little. She suddenly felt a numbing itch. This kid had actually pinched her back, and then moved a little. Guan Qinghan's entire body stiffened. She turned her head to look. She saw that the hateful guy's eyes were still closed. But, his face was full of enjoyment. The corners of his mouth were curled up in an extremely wretched smile. This was her brother-in-law's most wretched side in the past. But, wasn't his previous behavior just an act? How could it be? That palm moved again. It went all the way down. How could Guan Qinghan not know that this kid was taking advantage of her? Ah! Guan Qinghan cried out in alarm. She jumped up as if her butt was on fire. Without thinking, she slapped him on the face almost instinctively. After a crisp, "pa" sound, she followed up with a ruthless kick. Then, she stomped her feet. Her face was bright red, and she was dazed for a while. Suddenly, she covered her face and ran away in shame. Young Lady Guan's martial power had increased exponentially, and her speed could be said to be extremely fast. In fact, her white shadow had flashed, and she had disappeared without a trace. She arrived in her boudoir, and her heart was still beating like a drum. She was angry and embarrassed at the same time, and her face seemed to be on fire. She angrily stamped her feet, and 2 drops of clear tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. She was in a daze for a long while. Then, she suddenly threw herself down on the bed, and covered her head with her hands. Then, she covered her head. A faint choking sound was heard. Jun Moxie was startled. He hadn't even opened his eyes when he received a slap on his face. Jun Dashao was infuriated after that crisp slap. What's going on? He was about to open his mouth to ask. Suddenly, a strong surge of energy surged from his lower abdomen. Jun Dashao didn't even have time to feel the pain. His entire body was sent flying. It was as if he was riding on the clouds. He flew no less than 30 feet away. Then, he fell into the flowering shrubs with a plop. It was no less than 30 feet. Jun Dashao's small body couldn't be considered as a tall and sturdy man since his rebirth. But, he still had the standard figure of a man. So, his weight was at least 50 kilograms. But, he had been sent flying by a kick from a beautiful woman. His leg strength was very strong. Or, could it be that he had become so strong after taking the medicine? Medicine can't be taken indiscriminately. He crawled out in a daze. There was no one in front of him. He thought for a long time before he realized what was going on. He couldn't help but feel a little mad. I admit, although I did have the intention to act like a hooligan, and I did act like a hooligan a little. But my original intention was to help you. But, in the end, no matter what, how could you do such a thing without even informing me? That's too unreasonable. Although I was indeed the one who acted like a hooligan first, but, the young Master Jun defended himself in his heart for a while, but he felt that he was in the wrong more and more, as if, this slap and this kick were completely justified. I deserve them. He couldn't even absolve himself. How could he not be depressed? Young Master Jun was left speechless. He had given pills to Old Man Jun and his third uncle, and they had almost skinned him alive. Then, he had given pills to Guan Qinghan, and had even helped her to make a breakthrough. He had thought that his beautiful sister-in-law would give him some commendation, or at least some affirmation. Perhaps she would even say that she would be gentle. But, who would have thought that he would eat a fried dumpling, and then get kicked in the stomach? Fortunately, it was his stomach. What if it was a little lower? Wouldn't it be a complete loss? Jun Mo Xia wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Then, he ran away in a crestfallen manner. He didn't forget that his lower body was really heroic. If he had kicked it, he wouldn't have lost everything. At the very least, he wouldn't have had to go to Tiannan. He would have had to carry his second brother and practice frog jumping at home. His reputation would have gone up in smoke. With a single command from young Master Jun, all 254 men of the Jun family who were in the midst of their high-intensity training, whether they were in the midst of sparring, resistance training, or being steeped in medicinal water, all stopped what they were doing at the same time. In an instant, they split into 2 groups and stood neatly in front of Jun Mo Xia. 2 neat phalanxes. Everyone looked full of energy. Remember, when you were training, I said that I wanted to have 2 teams. The 2 strongest teams. One would be the Heaven Destroyer, and the other would be the Spirit Devourer. These 2 teams are not only the strongest, but also the backbone of my strength. The Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams will accompany me to dominate the world and rule the continent. And the members of these 2 teams will be chosen from you. They will be the nightmare of the entire world. They will also be the strongest warriors of the entire continent. Jun Mo Xia paced back and forth slowly. His sharp eyes swept across the faces of each and every one of the men in front of him. Everyone's breathing became heavy, and their eyes were filled with a sincere desire. To become the strongest warrior, to become the nightmare of any enemy. This had always been their greatest pursuit. The greatest desire of their lives. At that time, I also said that you are not worthy. You are not worthy. So, I don't even know your names. First, I am not interested. Second, you are not worthy of me knowing. Jun Moxie said slowly. There was a strange rhythm in his slow voice. It was as if there was a heavy pressure that caused the entire world and even the flow of time to slow down. For days later, you will carry out the first mission that I have issued. The members of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams will also be chosen after this mission. They will become the true strength that belongs to me, Jun Moxie. Those who survive this mission will be the members of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams. They will also embark on their own path of killing. In the future, when the entire continent hears their names, they will tremble. Jun Mo Xia stared at them and suddenly said in a low voice, "But, this operation is different from the previous ones. It is not the same. This time, we are going to select the real iron-blooded team members. It is also going to be a clash of life and death. I will clearly tell everyone that this operation is extremely dangerous. Every one of you has a 90% chance of death. Even saying that it will be a 9 out of 10 chance of survival is a conservative estimate. Now, if you want to back out, you can take a step back. I will not force you. It is not shameful to think about your own life. Anyone can leave on their own. I, Jun Moxie, or the Jun family will not make things difficult for you." The autumn wind whistled. Not a single one of the 254 people moved. In fact, they did not even blink. This is the only chance to leave. There is no turning back. I repeat, this mission is very likely to end in death. There is no return. This is your last chance. Jun Moxie said Lenglang. Still, no one moved. Jun Moxie nodded lightly and suddenly said in a stern voice, "If you want to become a member of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer team, take a step forward." Boom! The 254 people took a step forward in unison. They used so much force that the entire Jun family's courtyard seemed to tremble from this orderly and forceful stomp. Very good. Taking this step forward is a one-way road with no return. There is no room for regret. This is also the path of the strong. It is the path of the iron-blooded men. Let me say a few words to you. Jun Moxie thought for a moment and suddenly raised his head. His eyes were like lightning as they swept across everyone. Everyone's hearts tightened and they could not help but straighten their backs. They only heard Jun Moxie say in a low voice, "The path of a man is only one step. Life and death, glory and splendor do not look back. The blood of a man is as hard as iron. The will of a mountain of knives and the sea of fire is indomitable. The tears of a man are the most expensive. Alone against 10,000 enemies, never retreating. Broken bones, flowing blood, life and death, never looking back. This is the ballad of a man. Only iron-blooded men are qualified to sing it. Only real men can understand it." Jun Moxie clasped his hands behind his back and said leisurely, "May all my brothers be men. Everyone, take the first step of a man. From now on, accompany me to laugh at the wind and clouds and roam the world." The entire place was filled with a solemn silence. But everyone's expression became excited. These heroic ballad of a man made everyone feel as if their blood was boiling. It was as if every pore on their body was bursting with energy. Pairs of ox-like eyes emitted a fiery glow. What a good ballad of a man! The path of a man is only one step. Life and death, glory and splendor do not look back. As long as you identify your goal and take a step forward, it will be the direction of your life. This is the persistence of a man, the persistence of no regrets. The blood of a man is as hard as iron. The will of a mountain of knives and the sea of fire is indomitable. This is the unyielding nature of a man. The tears of a man are the most precious. Alone against 10,000 enemies, never retreating. Think about it. The sun is setting in the west. The ground is covered in blood and corpses. His comrades have all left. He is the only one left to face the enemy's million-strong army. How tragic is that? How can you retreat? His bones were crushed and his blood flowed freely. He refused to turn back no matter what. That is what a man should be. The two captains took the lead, and the 254 warriors passed by Jun Mo Xia one by one. Then, they received their share of the pills. Then, they clasped their hands, and strode away. In the blink of an eye, 254 people had each received their own pills. They were still in two neat square groups, and there was not the slightest bit of chaos. These pills are rare elixirs that seize the fortune of the heavens and earth. I have gone through many difficulties and spent tens of millions of silvers to get them. Now, these pills are all in your hands. Take them all together. These pills can increase your Xian Qi cultivation by 10 years. Everyone, do not let me down. Jun Moxie stood with his hands behind his back and said solemnly. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. In the Xian continent, they had heard of some rare items. 10,000 years old lingji, ginseng, knotweed, and other magical herbs that could increase one's Xian Qi cultivation. But in these tens of thousands of years, there had never been a pill that could increase one's Xian Qi. Not to mention seeing it with their own eyes, they had never even heard of it. But today, not only did their young master obtain it, he even handed over these priceless treasures to them. In a split second, everyone's heart was filled with a deep sense of gratitude. Warriors die for those who understand them. Everything was said without words. Following the command of the two captains, the 254 people stepped forward at the same time. Each of them stood a few feet away from each other. They raised their heads and swallowed the 3 precious pills. Then, they sat down cross-legged with a solemn expression. They circulated the Xian Qi in their dantian and digested the pills. Jun Moxie stood in front of the team. His expression was calm and indifferent, but his hands were already holding onto flying daggers. He was on full alert. At this moment, even though they were in their own home, in their own territory, they did not dare to be careless. A total of 200 people were advancing at the same time. Such an action was absolutely unprecedented. So, Jun Moxie had to be on full alert. The third master, Jun Wu-yi, was standing on a tall tower far away from the training ground. He was watching from afar, and the corners of his mouth twitched as he muttered, "I knew that this brat would have kept a lot of them for himself. Sure enough, I guessed right. He has 254 of them at once." Grandpa Jun snorted twice and said, "Mo Xia can use this medicine. But you cannot use it carelessly. If news of this gets out, it will be very dangerous for Mo Xia. An ordinary man is innocent, but his treasures arouse his own ruin. Even for my Jun family, if something were to happen to this rare elixir, we would be consigned to eternal damnation. Wu-yi, this matter must be handled with extreme caution. I would rather bury these elixirs in the ground than expose their true origins. I will not allow anything to happen to Mo Xia. Do you understand?" I understand. Jun Wui nodded his head and said in a deep voice, only those who are willing to die for our Jun family can take this medicine. If there is even the slightest doubt, they will not try it. It is better to miss it than to take the risk. Well said. Grandpa Jun's deep eyes looked down at his grandson, who was standing upright and unafraid. With a strong sense of love, he added, in addition, the timing of taking the medicine must also be accurate. Moreover, the person taking the medicine must not know that it was due to the use of the elixir. Do you understand how to demonstrate this? Jun Wui nodded his head and said slowly, Jun Wui was crippled for 10 years. His body was crippled, but his heart was not crippled. By chance, he created a method that uses his own strength to boost the strength of others. That's all. Grandpa Jun's eyes narrowed. If that's the case, then you are the one at risk? Jun Wui smiled indifferently and said, Father, don't worry. I know what to do. This way, no one will come looking for Mo Xia because of this matter. Then you must be very careful. Grandpa Jun nodded his head and did not say anything else. His eyes were cold and dignified as he said, I want all the information on the 254 people below. This included every bit of their qualifications, experiences, people, things, good friends, and people they still had contact with, as well as their origins, families, parents, children, neighbors, or even, the beauties they were dating, and even, their lovers in the brothels. Investigate carefully, and if you found anything wrong, immediately get rid of it. Even if it is groundless, you must not let it go unjustly, understand? Yes. Grandpa Jun's words were resolute and decisive. It was obvious that he was issuing a military order. Especially the last 4 words, rather than let it go unjustly, were even more decisive. Jun Wui also responded solemnly like a subordinate receiving an order from his superior in the army. Although it was only 1 word, both of them understood that this was no different from issuing a military order. When Jun Moxie's elixir came out, Grandpa Jun Zhantian's first thought was that this matter could cause a sensation and bring about trouble. Therefore, Grandpa Jun's current arrangement was to prepare for a rainy day. For the sake of his grandson's safety, Grandpa Jun was willing to disregard everything. Similarly, for the sake of his only nephew's safety, Third Master Jun was willing to bet everything, even his life. Only a few people who had reached the Gold Xian realm were able to easily inherit the pure Xian Qi and fuse it with their own Xian Qi. However, more than 95% of the strong men had fallen into a state of extreme pain. They were only silver Xian cultivators. But, under the stimulation of the powerful medicinal power, their blood vessels were expanding, and the muscles on their bodies were bulging up. Their skin was shining with a silvery light. That was the silver Xian Qi rapidly flowing and surging in their meridians. These people were also silver Xian cultivators, but their foundations weren't very strong. So, such a huge amount of pure Xian Qi had suddenly burst out in their bodies. And, each and every one of them had to bear an enormous amount of pain. However, they had to endure this pain themselves. Only by enduring it themselves would they be able to reap the greatest harvest. This was also a kind of tempering and reference for their future breakthroughs. Several of the weakest Xian Qi cultivators were sweating profusely at this moment. Their skin had turned blood red, as if something was about to break through the surface of their skin. Their black faces were distorted, and it was clear that they were enduring a great deal of pain. Every stage of Xian Qi cultivation requires a breakthrough. For example, a breakthrough from silver Xian to gold Xian, a breakthrough from gold Xian to Yu Xian, and so on. This is a kind of qualitative breakthrough, and within a single realm, there is a difference between the strong and the weak. For example, almost all of the strong men who were in the midst of a breakthrough were silver Xian or above. However, their Xian Qi cultivation was not particularly strong, and most of them were inferior to Guan Qing Han. Although Guan Qing Han's family was not big, it was still a family with a long history, and she had been cultivating since childhood. This was why Guan Qing Han was able to achieve a breakthrough after taking the 3 elixirs. Even without June Moxie's help, at most, she would only need to sleep for one more night. However, almost all of the strong men had not cultivated enough Xian Qi, and it was difficult for them to control the newly obtained 10 years of pure Xian Qi. Moreover, they were different from Guan Qinghan. If they were unable to control the newly obtained Xian Qi, apart from the failure of this breakthrough, it was very likely that they would not be able to make any progress for the rest of their lives. Fortunately, all of them had experienced June Moxie's hellish training more than once, and their willpower was tempered far beyond that of ordinary people. Although this feeling was difficult to bear, they were still able to endure it. So far, no one had cried out, but the sound of teeth gnashing could be heard continuously. Apart from the sound of teeth gnashing, there was not a single groan of pain. On top of the tower, Jun Zhantian's eyes gradually became dignified, and he said, "These 200 people are actually real men. Such hard bones. Even this old man is moved." Jun Wui smiled, and his eyes were also full of praise. Finally, a ray of silver light that had almost solidified transformed into a faint golden light. Although the golden light wasn't dazzling, it was exceptionally tangible. This was the sign that one of them had finally overcome this difficult hurdle, and had entered the higher realm of Gold Xian. The second, the third, as the Gold Xian light continued to flicker, dozens of men succeeded in breaking through. After going through the most painful period, what replaced it was endless joy. They did not immediately stand up, but instead closed their eyes, and slowly adjusted their breathing, feeling the huge changes in their bodies. They guided the unprecedented strength in their bodies, and slowly circulated it through their meridians, trying their best to adapt to the changes in their bodies as quickly as possible. Then, a large silver light flashed, and soared into the sky. The entire courtyard of the Jun family seemed to have turned into a bright silver. More than 200 men had broken through at the same time, and the radiance of this moment was so dazzling that Jun Zhantian and his son, who were on top of the tower, felt a little dizzy. Among these people, the weakest has already reached the middle level of the Silver Xian realm. Most of them are at the peak of the Silver Xian realm. There are also a few who have advanced to the Gold Xian realm, and the 4 with the highest cultivation are already at the peak of the Gold Xian realm. Grandpa Jun sucked in a breath. If such a team were to go to the battlefield, they will not go to the battlefield, they are no longer soldiers, Jun Wui said lightly, they will only fight for Mo Xia in their entire lives. Going to the battlefield, for them, is a pure waste. I will not allow such a waste. Mo Xia once said that the weakest of these people must reach the peak of the Earth Xian realm. At that time, I only thought that he was talking big, but now it seems that it is not impossible. You must know that the strongest of these people was only at the 8th level 3 months ago. Now, they have actually advanced to the peak of the Gold Xian realm. This is amazing progress, it is simply heaven-defying. Jun Wui said slowly, and his eyes flashed with excitement. The weakest is at the peak of the Earth Xian realm, doesn't that mean, more than 200 Tian Xian experts have formed an army? My God, even if the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor join forces, they would not be able to come up with such a large force, my God. Grandpa Jun was left speechless, and the hand that was stroking his beard unconsciously pulled out a strand of his snow-white beard. Chapter 305. 1st of August, first update. Requesting a guaranteed monthly ticket. After a while, all 254 of them finally finished upgrading. Not a single one failed. They stood up one after another and quickly returned to their original formation. They looked at Jun Moxie, their eyes filled with gratitude and fanaticism. Boom! 254 of them knelt down at the same time and kowtowed to the ground. A loud sound rang out, shaking the surroundings. Thank you, young master. More than 200 of them shouted in unison. I will give you 2 days. Use the cruelest method to adapt to the changes in your bodies, the changes in your Xian Qi, the use of your moves, and the cooperation between everyone. On the 3rd day, go to the armory to collect your weapons. June Moxie slowly nodded. Lenglen continued. In addition, this matter is our top secret. No one is allowed to leak it. If anyone violates this, all of you will be punished. No exceptions. Yes. We would rather die than leak it. Up in the tower, Grandpa June's eyes were filled with gratification and worry. He slowly said. Moc's methods are strong, his methods are sufficient, and he also has the charisma to lead his troops. Using both carrot and stick, he is indeed a genius. However, he is not suited to lead an army. Why? Father, Moc leads his troops, and his discipline is strict to the point of being strict. This is the way of a general, and he can lead the strongest legion. So, why does father say that he isn't suitable to lead troops? Jun Wu-yi was very puzzled. Moc's heart is too ruthless. Grandpa June snorted and sighed. Moc can lead an army of experts, but he is not suited to lead ordinary soldiers. What he said just now may seem ordinary, but did you pay attention to the last sentence? If anyone violates this, all of you will be punished. No exceptions. Grandpa June sighed. When Moc said those words, there was no hesitation or emotion. I can guess that if any one of these 254 people were to leak the news, Moc will do what he said. There will be no exceptions. That doesn't mean anything, right? Since he can cultivate this batch, he can cultivate the next batch. Jun Wui said disapprovingly, Father, you and I are both generals. You must know the importance of military discipline in the army. Although the punishment was harsh and cruel, it was undoubtedly the most important method to maintain military discipline. Under such an important matter, how could he be soft-hearted? Even if it really happened, it's only natural. That's why you can only be generals and not commander-in-chief. Jun Zhantian sighed, a general can only have 10,000 subordinates at most. Dispatching them in an emergency was also considered wartime. But the ordinary personal guards were also the disciples' soldiers, and any general could only have a quota of 10,000 people. He knew his own men well, and they were well trained. Nothing would go wrong. For example, your bodyguards and Moc's troops. However, as a commander, he had to command the entire situation. He could easily have hundreds of thousands or even millions of troops under his command. If he was still so harsh, I'm afraid, he would kill his own troops. Armies are stationed together, and there are always conflicts and friction. And the men in the army are mostly hot-blooded and impulsive. An army of 100,000 is stationed for a night, and there will be at least hundreds of conflicts. If you and Moc used the method, I'm afraid these people would have been beheaded. Jun Zhantian sighed, a general must be strict, and a commander-in-chief must be magnanimous. Being a general and being a commander-in-chief are two completely different things. You are too unyielding, and Moc is too ruthless. These are both your strengths, but at the same time, they are also your weaknesses. Jun Zhantian said deeply, Moc may be ruthless, but it is enough to protect himself. But your unyielding attitude will only cause you to suffer. This is the difference between the two of you. Jun Wui stood quietly, thinking about his father's words. He did not move for a long time. On the field, the cruel training that risked one's life had already begun. This time, the intensity of the training was clearly more than 10 times that of the previous ones. Jun Moxie returned to his courtyard and took a deep breath. Everyone had advanced, and he was the only one left. He had not even tasted the pills he had refined. He had just advanced to the middle stage of Yuxian. If he were to take this pill, would the effect be better? Jun Moxie did not know. But he knew that if there was even the slightest effect, he would have earned it for free. So he did not hesitate to take out a 10 years pill and swallow it. Jun Moxie did not take the Devil's Heart pill at the same time. The Devil's Heart pill would certainly be safer, but at the same time, it would also mean that he would lose an opportunity to cultivate his mind. This would also have a negative impact on the improvement of his mental state. Feeling the sudden abundance of qi in his dantian, Jun Moxie was delighted. It was indeed useful. He settled his mind and entered into a state of forgetfulness. The power of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune surged through his meridians like a raging river. The next day, the imperial edict was issued. Jun Wui was appointed as the general of Southern Heaven City, commanding an army of 20,000. He was to set out for Southern Heaven City to assist the aristocratic families in quelling the Xian beast tide. Apart from Jun Wui, the emperor had also named a few people from the aristocratic families. Among them, Jun Moxie was impressively on the list. Apart from him, there were also a few acquaintances from the Meng family, Murong Qianjun and Murong Qianli from the Murong family, and 3 heroes from the Dugu family. There were also people from the Song family on the list. But contrary to Jun Moxie's expectations, Li Yuran was not on the list. In other words, Li Yuran did not have a part in this trip to Southern Heaven City. How could His Majesty leave such a scourge in the empty capital? Jun Moxie did not believe that the emperor could not see through Li Yuran's ambition. Since he could see through it, then there was a problem in keeping him. Since the descendants of the aristocratic families were on the list, they would definitely send experts to protect them. Although His Majesty's imperial edict did not ask for anything, it had imperceptibly transferred a portion of the experts from the aristocratic families. After receiving the imperial edict, Jun Wui immediately rushed to the military to handle the various procedures. Although His Majesty had requested to set out on the same day, how could the entire army be ready in 1 or 2 days? They would need at least 5 days to prepare. The army had yet to move, but the provisions had to go first. Old Sir Jun Zhantian's martial order blew like a hurricane through the provinces and counties along the way, arranging for them to prepare all the necessities. At the same time, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Revenue, and the Ministry of Military Affairs worked together in a swift and decisive manner. In just a short day, all the necessities for the army had been allocated. Such efficiency was enough to make anyone dumbfounded. There had been cases of soldiers going to war before, but at that time, which one of them did not run back and forth several times to prepare the supplies? Even when they went to war, there would often be issues such as supplies not being in place, rations not being supplied in time, and so on. There were a lot of annoying things that could not be compared to this time. But no one was dissatisfied. Who was Jun Wui? Although he was currently unemployed at home, he had always been a legend in the Tianxiang Empire's military, an idol. The blood general's reputation was still illustrious even after 10 years. Now that he had finally returned, the entire military was in a state of jubilation. Especially his old comrades and subordinates, they were extremely excited. Whether it was the Dugu family or the Jun family in charge of the military, Jun Wui was given the green light all the way. Not a single civil or military official dared to raise a single objection on this matter. The officers and men in the army were looking forward to Jun Wui's command. They were looking forward to this famous great general's command. They were looking forward to Jun Wui's command. Although the army had yet to set out, their morale was already high. In the palace, are you wondering why I sent Jun Moxie out, but left Li Yuran behind? His Majesty wasn't playing chess this time. Instead, he was holding a cup of tea, and was sipping it. His face was full of smiles. Yes. Jun Moxie has no desire for power, but Li Yuran is obviously full of ambition. I don't understand why Your Majesty left Li Yuran behind, and let Jun Moxie go. Mr. Wen sat opposite to the Emperor, and spoke in a somewhat puzzled manner. Li Yuran has needs, so he has weaknesses. He's easy to control. Moreover, he won't be able to make any big waves under my watch. I want to see if this person can be used by me. Therefore, I've left him behind this time so that I can see more clearly. His Majesty smiled gently. As for Jun Moxie, he doesn't have any desires. This kind of person can leave as he pleases, and he can stay as he pleases. He's like a wild crane in the clouds, and it's impossible to control him. Therefore, I've let him go this time. Whether he lives or dies in the midst of the Xian beast tide will depend on him. I still don't understand. If he has the temperament of a wild crane in the clouds, why must he? Mr. Wen frowned. A wild crane in the clouds is nothing to be worried about. But, he has such a powerful force behind him. That's the most worrying thing. A cold light flashed in His Majesty's eyes. He sighed, great merit can shake the Lord, and great influence can attract the wind. Mr. Wen sighed, but didn't say anything. There should be some movement on the second brother's side, right? His Majesty suddenly smiled in a strange manner. Yes. The crossbows will reach the southern suburbs of the capital in the early morning of the fourth day. Mr. Wen sighed again. Very well. I won't allow any of these crossbows to wander outside. His Majesty gently placed his palms on the table. He spread his fingers, and fixed his eyes on them. It seemed as if he was admiring the perfection of his slender fingers. Rest assured, Your Majesty. Mr. Wen replied, why didn't Your Majesty issue the decree directly? I would have had no choice but to cripple my second son if I had done so. His Majesty smiled bitterly. He looked into the distance and murmured, it would have been a great shock to the imperial court, the world, and even my harem. Undercurrents are surging in all directions. They can't withstand such a shock. Mr. Wen lowered his eyes, but didn't say anything. He had thought that His Majesty didn't want to do so because of his father-son relationship. But, it seemed that he was very wrong. He laughed at himself in his heart. The thinking of a Xian cultivator and an emperor are very different. Send a letter to the Blood Sword Hall. Tell them that no one is allowed to escape from the Zhao family of Jiangnan, the trade union of Jiangnan, or the second brother's men. This matter must be done cleanly. His Majesty exhaled deeply. The second brother wanted to hire assassins, but he didn't know where to start. The Blood Sword Hall came to him on their own initiative. But, the second brother didn't suspect anything. My son's wisdom has disappointed me. Mr. Wen remained silent. It wasn't that he didn't suspect anything. But, who would suspect that an emperor who ruled over the four seas could secretly control such a sinister and bloody team? Even if he said it out loud, most people wouldn't believe him. Chapter 306. If the second prince, Jun Moxie, or anyone else were to know about this, they would certainly understand why the second prince would always send assassins from the Blood Sword Hall to carry out a mission, and would always send someone who was only a hair's breadth away from completing the mission. The Blood Sword Hall was an extremely famous assassin organization within the Tianxiang Empire, and even the entire Xian continent. The mastermind behind the scenes was this was extremely unexpected. But if one thought about it carefully, perhaps this was the most normal and logical thing to do. Was it not? Why was an assassin organization known by many of the upper echelons of the Tianxiang Empire able to act so openly and unscrupulously? They were able to have close contact with many of the aristocratic families of the imperial court, and even the royal family. This kind of behavior would not be strange if it were in a weak country where martial power was respected. However, Tianxiang was a country with tyrannical military strength and a high degree of centralization of power. Moreover, the emperor of the Tianxiang Empire was a rare and outstanding person. So, how could he allow such an unscrupulous assassin organization to exist in his country? Assassinating the royal princess, and slaughtering the bloodline of important ministers, all of this was too much of a trifling matter. Moreover, this trifling matter was far more than that. For example, the assassination of Princess Raimu was a well-known assassin organization in the Tianxiang continent. So, the existence of Yi Guhan was admittedly a secret, and also a taboo. But, how could such a secretive organization like the Blood Sword Hall not be able to find out about the existence of a powerhouse like Yi Guhan? But, they still only sent 2 gold Xian assassins. In the face of a target that had Tian Xian as a bodyguard, would gold Xian assassins be of any use? Would there be any meaning? It was a pity that the second prince was still buried in the dark. He was even sent away by a bullsh *T, your information is wrong. Perhaps, for the rest of his life, this second prince would never understand. From start to finish, everything he had done had been used by his father as an excuse and tool to clean up the bureaucracy, reorganize the court, and even purge the harem. His exploitation was too thorough. Even if the hitman Jun, who was also a top-notch assassin, were to find out about this matter, he would also be convinced by the emperor of the Tianxiang Empire. Harem. Meng, tell me honestly. Did something happen to her? Are you sick? It was a graceful and elegant lady in a yellow robe with a wind crown on her head. She was the current empress and also the biological mother of Princess Raimu, Murong Xiu. No. No, I'm fine. Everything is normal. Why would you say that, mother? Princess Raimu refused to admit it. If Imperial Mother knew about Yi Guhan's current state, Raimu really didn't know what would happen next. She could only deny it. Normal. You child, you can't lie since you were young. Once you lie, you will stutter. The Empress smiled gently and looked at her daughter lovingly. These days, you are sometimes worried, sometimes secretly laughing. At night, you often cry. Your tears wet your pillow and quilt. Do you still think that this is normal? Mother. Princess Raimu acted like a spoiled child. Would your daughter lie to you? I really don't have anything strange. Could it be? The Empress smiled and pinched her daughter's little nose dotingly. Perhaps you have taken a fancy to a young man from a certain family? Imperial Mother, what are you talking about? Princess Ling Meng shouted, her face red with embarrassment. But in her heart, she was hesitating. Should I take this opportunity to tell Mother about Jun Moxie? At the thought of that person, Princess Raimu couldn't help but blush and blush. The Empress looked at her daughter's expression. How could she not know what had happened? Didn't she have such a strange body of a little girl in the past? Her daughter had finally grown up. You little girl, do you know which family's son is from? How could he be favored by my precious daughter? The Empress looked at her daughter teasingly. Mother. Princess Raimu twisted her waist and hesitated for a while. Finally, she decided not to say what was in her heart for the time being. Raimu was not a fool. How could she not know that Jun Moxie's attitude was thought-provoking? She was afraid that this guy didn't have a good impression of her at all. If she said it rashly, she might ask for a snub. However, in the heart of the princess, there was a lot of dissatisfaction. You pretended to be a playboy a few years ago. Any girl wouldn't be moved by you. Even if you tried to please me, why would I care about you? Now, I don't have a problem with you, but you, a lecher, put on airs again. Humph. Little girl, don't be shy. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. I won't force you. Ha, Meng, if you have a sweetheart, you must tell me as soon as possible. Do you understand? Otherwise, you're not young anymore. If your father decides to bestow a marriage to you on a whim one day, it would be troublesome if there were any objections at that time. The Empress stroked her daughter's hair and said dotingly. Yes, I understand. Princess Raimu snuggled in her mother's arms. She couldn't help but think of Yi Guhan and Uncle Ye's miserable situation for so many years. She suddenly felt a lump in her throat and wanted to cry. I don't know why, but I've been on tenterhooks for the past few days. I keep feeling that something bad is going to happen. The Empress smiled faintly and muttered to herself thoughtfully, what could happen? I always feel pain in my heart. Princess Raimu's heart tightened. She didn't dare to say anything. How is Uncle Yi now? And that damned enemy, he doesn't even let me visit Uncle Yi, the Jun family. June Moxie was speechless as he looked at the little girl who was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws in front of him. He was truly speechless. Because, I want to go too. Dugu Xiaoyi was holding Little White in her arms as she arrogantly announced. Elder sister, what are you going to do? Feed the Xian beasts? Are you going to help me or the Xian beasts? June Moxie rolled his eyes in a bad mood. Oh God, please spare me. I've been pestered by this little girl for the whole morning. Humph, you're the one who's going to feed the Xian beasts. I'm very powerful now. Even my 7 brothers are no match for me once I use my blade skills. I'm invincible under the gold Xian level. How can a mere profound beast do anything to this young lady? Dugu Xiaoyi proudly said, besides, Little White is still a level 8 Xian beast. Isn't he just like a puppy? If everyone is like this, then what am I afraid of? Killing 1,000 or 800 a day is just like playing around. Who knows, I might even be able to find a few more Little Whitey. Little White whimpered in dissatisfaction. How could such a high-level Xian beast be so easily touched? He rolled his eyes and looked at her, but he also knew that it was a very unwise move to reason with this mistress of his, so he ignored her and continued to sleep. June Moxie felt helpless. Big sister, how can you compare like this? Although Little White is a high-level Xian beast, he is still underage, okay? I shouldn't say it like that. It should be, just born. How could this be compared? Haven't you seen other Xian beasts? Even if I've never eaten pork, I've never seen a pig run. What nonsense are you spouting? I've never seen a pig run. Other Xian beasts? What's wrong with the other Xian beasts? When they see this young lady, they immediately become dispirited and don't even dare to raise their heads. The little girl said proudly. June Dashao's cheeks streamed with tears. That's right. How could a daughter of a rich family have seen a pig run? The ones you've seen are the lowest level Xian beasts that have been tamed by others. Big sister, don't make a fuss. You always carry your Little White every time you go out. He is a standard high-level Xian beast. Those Xian beasts in our Tianxiang will certainly become dispirited when they see him. What does this mean? Here, Little White is very strong. But in Tian Fa, Little White is nothing. He's nothing. June Dashao earnestly tried to persuade her. Are you trying to fool a child? Little White is so powerful, but he's nothing. I want to go anyway. I must go, I must go. Dugu Xiaoyi said rudely, my grandfather's 70th birthday is in 2 months. My grandfather fought on the battlefield in his early years, and got injured. So, his waist can't be exposed to the wind, and he can't catch a cold. I've heard that wearing the fur of a Xian beast, the snow ferret, will prevent one from getting sick. So, I'm planning to hunt a snow ferret for my grandfather's birthday. I want to show my filial respect to him. The little girl's meaning was that the snow ferret was already waiting for her there. So, she only needed to go there and take it. June Moxie almost fainted. Big sister, do you think that the snow ferret is a kitten that you're raising? Is it that easy to catch? That thing's level is even higher than your iron-winged panther. It's a level 8 Xian beast that's not only in name but also in reality. Even saying it's level 8 is a conservative estimate. In other words, that thing can evolve. Do you understand? During this period of time, the little girl's behavior was as gentle as water. So, June Moxie had almost forgotten about her previous domineering behavior. Now, it seemed that she had reverted to her old ways. No wonder people say that it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change a person's nature. So what? No matter how powerful it is, it's just a small ferret. What's the big deal? Dugu Xiaoyi waved her hand carelessly. She didn't take June Dashao's words to heart. She rolled her eyes, and instantly lowered her head to plead, Brother Mo Xia, take me with you. Isn't it just a matter of one more horse? Is that okay? No. There's no room for discussion. June Moxie didn't even think about it, and flatly refused. Isn't this a matter of one more horse? If something were to happen, wouldn't the Dugu family's hooligans skin me alive? Besides, I'm not a gentleman. If my bestial nature flares up along the way and I do something to you, that's not a big deal, but not a small one. Let me go, brother Mosia, I beg you. Dugu Xiaoyi grabbed his arm, and acted like a spoiled child. No. There's no use in calling me brother. June Moxie snorted. He thought for a moment, and added, there's no use in calling me husband either. In your dreams. Dugu Xiaoyi wrinkled her nose, stuck out her tongue, and said, if you don't take me with you, I'll go with my brother. Is that so rare? Don't tell me that I can't go to the Southern Sky City without you. Go ahead. June Moxie spread out his hands, as long as you don't follow me, then everything can be discussed. If your 3 brothers are willing to take you with them, it'll save me a lot of trouble. Help me thank them for sharing your burden. Chapter 307. But I want to follow you, hee, it'll be fun if I follow you. You're not a quiet person. So, the journey will be very interesting. What's the point of following those 3 stupid brothers? Dugu Xiaoyi saw that her trick was ineffective. So, she shamelessly pestered him again. June Moxie understood that the 3 brothers must have thoroughly rejected this girl's request. So, she came to pester him. Otherwise, why would this girl come looking for me? Let me tell you, there's no way. There's no door, and there's no window. June Moxie's heart was as hard as stone. He wouldn't agree no matter what. You'd better stay at home and accompany my sister-in-law. You can't go to that kind of place. Girl, you're risking your life, not going on an outing. I don't know if she's at home or not. But, she certainly won't be able to accompany me. Because, I'm also going to the Southern Heaven City, a cold voice said. June Moxie's back stiffened. He turned his head with difficulty, and saw that it was Guan Qinghan who had spoken. Guan Qinghan felt that something was wrong about this trip to the Southern Heaven City. Not many people knew about the Shuehan Manor's matter. But, all the influential families of the capital must have gotten the news. And, the Imperial Palace was no exception. But, at this time, Jun Wui and June Moxie were called to go to battle. What's the meaning of this? Even if Jun Wui is leading the troops, why is June Moxie also involved? Therefore, Guan Qinghan was thinking a lot. And, she was thinking the most. What if the Shuehan Manor finds an excuse to make things difficult for Jun Wui and June Moxie after we arrive at the Southern Heaven City because of me? What should I do? This uncle and nephew's temperament is worse than the others. How could the 2 of them resist the might of the Shuehan Manor if they were to fall out with them? However, as long as one of them brought up this matter, based on Jun Wui's and June Moxie's temperament, they would definitely fall out with each other. At that time, how would it end? These 2 people, especially June Moxie, had always been a fearless person. What couldn't he do? Therefore, Guan Qinghan had to go, even if she had to die. Even if you don't bring me along, I will go alone. If there was nothing else, that would be the best. Everyone would return together. But if things got out of hand, Guan Qinghan would at least be a bargaining chip. If all else failed, he would rather sacrifice himself in exchange for the safe return of Jun Wui and June Moxie. However, he couldn't let this uncle and nephew know of his thoughts. Otherwise, they would rather break his legs than let him go. The 3rd uncle was a bit better, but his brother-in-law, June Moxie, was evil. He would definitely imprison him. Guan Qinghan was well aware of this point. Oh my God, sister-in-law, my dear sister-in-law, why are you causing trouble at this time? Why are you looking for me? Do you think I'm easy to bully? June Moxie scratched his head. He seemed to be going crazy. Even if you want to go, don't look for me. I don't have the final say. You can go and look for third uncle. It's your business whether you have the final say or not. But, it's my business whether I go or not. Guan Qinghan faintly looked at him. Then, she pulled Dugu Xiaoyi's arm and left. Before leaving, Dugu Xiaoyi winked at Jun Moxie to show off. Show off? As long as you don't cause me trouble, I won't mind. Jun Moxie's mouth twitched. In the afternoon of the same day, Jun Mo Xia and his 200 or so bodyguards dispersed, and silently disappeared from the Jun residence. At night, Grandpa Jun's burly body stood in the courtyard. He said a few words to the dozens of black shadows in front of him. Then, the dozens of people dispersed and disappeared without a trace. Grandpa Jun sighed and asked Old Pang, when will they arrive? Old Pang thought for a moment and said, probably tomorrow night. Grandpa Jun frowned. Old Pang, prepare the masks and night clothes. Old Pang's eyes revealed a smile. In Jun Wui's courtyard, Third Master Jun clasped his hands together. The paper in his hand turned into powder. He smiled and muttered, tomorrow night. Night fell. The long night passed quickly. The sun rose and set. It was dusk. The sun set and the moon rose. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. Zhao Wuji had already forgotten how many times he had whipped his horse. It had already been 2 days since he had abandoned the boat and landed on the shore. 2 days of non-stop galloping. Ever since they had set out from Jiangnan until now, they had been on the road without stopping for 9 days. And after rushing day and night, the harvest was also very obvious. They had saved 2 days from the scheduled time, 2 whole days. With these 2 extra days, he could avoid a lot of accidents. This was conceivable. This made him feel a little excited. In these 9 days, whether it was by land or by water, nothing unexpected happened. The journey was smooth. It was so smooth that it made him feel happy, but also a little unbelievable. It was really too smooth. But because of this, Zhao Wuji's heart did not relax. On the contrary, the string in his mind was getting tighter and tighter. This situation was too abnormal. It was so smooth that it was surprising. Ever since Zhao Wuji received this job, as the head of the Zhao family, he understood what this business represented and what it meant. But it was too late for regrets by the time he understood. Because the production of those things had already begun by the time he understood. Those things were what the second prince wanted. As a prince, what did he need these things for? Moreover, they had to be made in secret. Zhao Wuji knew that he had unknowingly boarded the second prince's pirate ship. Moreover, he couldn't get out of it. From the moment they received the order, every time these crossbows killed a person in the future, their families would be tied even more tightly to the second prince's war chariot. If they were to be stained with the blood of other princes, or even then, they would have no way out. But, he had no way to resist. Not to mention that the production had already begun. Could he back out even if it hadn't begun? His family had some influence. But, it was insignificant when compared to the second prince's strength. Perhaps, his family would be annihilated in half a day and a night if he were to decline this business. High risk often meant high return. As a businessman, when he received a business deal that could bring him 300% or even more profit, it was not a bad idea to risk his life for it. Moreover, there was a faint political meaning to this matter. If he could obtain a status or a reward because of this, therefore, Zhao Wuji felt as if he had eaten a fly. But, he still smiled and praised him. This fly is disgusting at first. But, it's very nutritious. After all, it's rich in protein. The production of these Xian beast crossbows had finally been completed in a short time. And, there hadn't been any mistakes along the way. The Zhao family's patriarch Zhao Wuji had finally relaxed a bit. But, his nerves had become even more tense. In his heart, he knew very well that the journey to the capital with the crossbow would be the real competition. Therefore, Zhao Wuji had stopped all of his family's businesses. Instead, he had gathered all of his family's experts to escort these crossbows to the capital. Moreover, he was still worried. So, he had hired the Jiangnan Trade Union at a great cost. He had even asked the Jiangnan Trade Union's vice president to personally lead a group of experts to ensure that nothing would go wrong. But, he had just finished his preparations when the second prince had already sent his elite guards to escort these crossbows to the capital. This had been a surefire way of insurance. But, it had only made Zhao Wuji even more frightened. He had arranged a considerable amount of escort strength. And, it was enough to deal with the vast majority of unforeseen events. However, it was obvious that the second prince was still worried. Since he was so serious about this matter, didn't that mean that the delivery of this batch of hand crossbows might meet with some unexpected interception? Some interception that they couldn't deal with the strength of the escorts they had arranged? And, it could be said that the true purpose of these crossbows was very clear. So, his previous plan to get lucky had also failed. The horse under his crotch had taken a step forward. And, it was getting closer to the bloody struggle between the imperial family. Finally, they had arrived at Tianxiang's capital. Eldest brother, we can confirm that this trip is safe. We'll reach Tianxiang's capital in another 200 kilometers. Even if someone wants to intercept us, I'm afraid that they won't dare to commit such a crime in the empire's capital. A thin man chased after them. He had a gratified smile on his face as he said, "It seems that we've been worried for nothing. I hadn't expected that things would go so smoothly. It seems that the second master's security measures are quite outstanding." This thin man was Zhao Wuji's younger brother. His name was Zhao Wutian. He was one of the few people in the Zhao family who knew the identity of the consignor of these goods. I hope so. Zhao Wuji let out a long sigh. Looking at the sky that was slowly darkening again, he suddenly felt that this gradually darkening world seemed to have become a huge black hole that was about to swallow him and his clan in one gulp, and he did not have the slightest ability to resist. There's only one last stretch of road left. Everyone, gather your strength, and advance at full speed. We must reach the capital as soon as possible, and hand over this batch of goods. Only then can we truly unload our burdens. Then, we can rest in peace. Zhao Wuji exhaled a long breath, and tried hard to dispel the messy thoughts in his mind. Zhao Wuji said in a deep voice. Yes. Zhao Wutian replied. He then slowed down the speed of his horse. Then, he took out a small flag from his bosom, and waved it twice in the air. The entire team's speed had been quite fast, but it had suddenly increased by a lot. The sound of hurried hooves suddenly resounded. A tall and sturdy middle-aged man had caught up with them. He was riding a purplish-red horse. His face was covered with dust, and there was a faint trace of impatience on his face. Zhao family's lord, we're not far from Tianxiang. So, there's no need to hurry like this, right? We've been in a state of apprehension along the way. So, our brothers are exhausted. The sky is dark, and it's difficult to travel at night. Moreover, it's very easy to change the situation. So, it would be better for us to find a place to rest for the night. Then, we'll continue our journey tomorrow morning. We're already 2 days ahead of schedule according to the previous deadline. So, we don't need to fight over the remaining time, right? Chapter 308. Today's outburst, the fourth watch. Shout at the top of his lungs, I'm begging for monthly votes. He had been suppressing a bellyful of anger along the way. Until now, he didn't even know what he was escorting. Along the way, they had been acting mysteriously. Apart from hurrying along, they had been hurrying along. He and his 20 companions were so exhausted that they almost fell apart. Yet, nothing had happened from the beginning to the end. Isn't this just tormenting us? The faces of the Zhao family's people were solemn, as if their mother had just died. The other group of bastards had come out of nowhere, and they were extremely arrogant. Crap. They're treating us like odd job slaves. Damn it. Do they think we're the emperor's imperial bodyguards? Therefore, Meng Xiaosong had been very depressed along the way. At this very moment, especially after rushing for an entire day, his buttocks were almost broken from the jolting of the horse's back. Seeing that night had fallen, he was sighing that it was finally time to rest. He was thinking of finding an inn to have a good drink, and when he was in the mood, he would find a girl to have some fun with. Who would have thought that there would be an abrupt order to speed up in front of him? Is there any justice in this world? Is there any reason for this? Every time we go on a mission, it's like we're on a sightseeing tour. When have we ever been in such a difficult situation? If it weren't for the price of 50,000 taels of silver, I wouldn't have been interested in making this trip in person. But I'm treating you like people. Don't crawl into the donkey shed. Therefore, Vice President Meng Xiaosong couldn't bear it any longer. He came up and asked in a loud voice. This matter is of great importance. We have to be careful. President Meng is very magnanimous. Please forgive us. Zhao Wuji forced a smile and cupped his hands in obeisance. Crap. This matter is of great importance. You've said this sentence at least 800 times on the way. You might not find it annoying, but I find it annoying. Zhao Wuji, this man advises you not to refuse the face that is given to you. This man only came to escort you because you paid a lot of money. We are not your Zhao family servants. You have to understand this clearly. Don't eat lard and be blinded by greed. Meng Xiaosong was anxious. He had heard the phrase, this matter is of great importance, on the way here. He had heard it so many times that his ears had gotten calluses. And now, he had heard it again at this critical juncture. He couldn't help but explode. Zhao Wuji forced a smile. He was about to say something and explain a little. After all, he couldn't allow an internal strife to break out. But, he hadn't expected that 4 large horses would gallop over at the same time. The 4 riders had cold expressions on their faces as they rushed over. They glared at Meng Xiaosong. Lengleng said, "What's going on? What are you yelling about? You're making a big fuss here as if your own mother just died. What's the matter?" These 4 knights were members of the Divine Storm Guard. They had been on a long and arduous journey. So, they had been complaining incessantly in their hearts for a long time. However, they weren't willing to see Meng Xiaosong take the initiative to launch an attack. We haven't even expressed our dissatisfaction. Who do you think you are? Meng Xiaosong could clearly feel the dense murderous aura coming from these 4 people. His heart was immediately filled with rage. A few insignificant gold Xian warriors actually dare to show off their might in front of an Earth Xian expert like me? How dare you threaten me? Cursing at me? Is there still justice in this world? Isn't that logical? What's wrong? Do you have any objections? Meng Xiaosong coldly glared back at them. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword as he faced Lengleng. However, Meng Xiaosong soon regretted his decision. Dozens of warriors had surrounded him from all directions in the blink of an eye. Shwa shwa shwa, a few sounds were heard as they unsheathed their long swords and broadswords. Dozens of warriors didn't utter a single word as they shouted. Instead, they rushed towards Meng Xiaosong at the same time. Their swords and sabers mercilessly hacked towards him. Crazy. They've all gone crazy. It must be said that these people were only gold Xian experts. So, they might not be able to deal with Meng Xiaosong who had already reached the Earth Xian realm. However, these people's actions were very unexpected. After all, they were all companions. Meng Xiaosong's mouth might be unhappy, but he wouldn't go as far as to start a fight. However, these people weren't giving him any face at all. They didn't even have time to prepare for a fight. Stop. Everyone, stop. We're all on the same side. Zhao Wuji's forehead was beaded with sweat. He hastily rushed over to mediate. Bang! Bang! Sounds were heard as they managed to escape from the siege. However, another group of knights had already prepared to charge forward. It was obvious that these warriors weren't very strong. However, they were proficient in the art of joint attacks. Once they started to attack, they would advance wave after wave. They wouldn't stop until the enemy had fallen. Zhao Wuji was so anxious that he almost couldn't speak. Everyone, we're all on the same side. We're all doing this for the greater good. So, why should we damage our friendship? Both sides finally stopped after many attempts of persuasion. The second prince's imperial bodyguards were used to being tyrannical. So, how could they possibly put Meng Xiaosong in their eyes? So, what if you're an Earth Xian expert? Several Earth Xian experts have died by our hands. Do you think you're missing one? Don't look down on your Earth Xian cultivation. We're only Gold Xian experts. We're the Imperial bodyguards. We're officials. You're a civilian. As long as you haven't reached a transcendent level like Tian Xian, we can do whatever we want with you. Do you still dare to have a temper? If you don't accept it, we'll give you a rebel's hat and make you stay in jail. Several of the prince's imperial bodyguards looked at Meng Xiaosong's plump buttocks with malice. I've heard that the felons in the prison like to play with flowers. Meng Xiaosong was about to flare up. However, Zhao Wuji whispered something in his ear. Meng Xiaosong immediately became well-behaved. These people are the imperial bodyguards. These few words dispelled Meng Xiaosong's anger. Instead, it turned into fear. Since ancient times, the people had never fought with the officials. This was a truth that had never changed since time immemorial. Even if the emperor's imperial bodyguards were to behead a local official for no reason, nobody would dare to say anything. So, why would I be a trifling Jianghu person? Moreover, I'm a Jianghu person with a family and a business. No wonder Zhao Wuji behaved like a grandson. So that's how it is. This is a mission for the imperial family. I wonder if I'll be able to get an official position after this mission is completed. Meng Xiaosong looked at these imperial bodyguards with a flattering look in his eyes as he thought of this. The team continued to move forward. The atmosphere had become much more harmonious because of this small disturbance. There was a mountain in front of them. This mountain was the Tianxiang city's Iron Wall Mountain. It was the natural barrier of the Tianxiang city. They could vaguely see the Tianxiang city from the top of this mountain. At this point, it could be said that the mission had been confirmed to be 99% complete. They could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Zhao Wuji let out a long sigh. He raised his hand and ordered them to rest for a while at the foot of the mountain. Then, the team started to cook. They were ready to eat their fill. Then, they would spur their horses to speed up the rest of the journey in one fell swoop. They wanted to find a happy place in the Tianxiang city as soon as possible. Smoke rose from the kitchen, and the fragrance of rice spread from the cauldron. The smell of barbecued meat also spread from the iron grill. The group of big men greedily swallowed their saliva. They had been mentally and physically exhausted this entire journey. It had been extremely unbearable. They could finally rest for a while. Then, they could relax and eat a big meal. Let's eat. Zhao Wutian shouted in high spirits. He carried a big iron bowl and moved forward. He, let's eat. Do you still want to eat? I could have made you hungry ghosts. But, our time is very limited. So, I have no choice but to send you to the underworld to eat. A sinister sneer, like the cold wind blowing from hell, spread out in a chilling manner. Who is it? Come out. Everyone tensed up. They stood up, and unsheathed their swords at the same time. They then vigilantly looked at the surrounding dark mountain forest. I've come to rob you. A loud roar resounded in high spirits. A blue light flashed with a loud rumble. The 6 cauldrons on the ground exploded with a bang. The cooked rice was scattered in all directions. The fragments of the cauldrons were sent flying in all directions. 5 or 6 miserable screams were heard in succession. Several people had been injured by the fragments of the cauldrons. Tian Xian expert. Everyone cried out in alarm. No one was an exception. It didn't matter whether it was the Earth Xian expert Meng Xiaosong or the arrogant imperial bodyguards. A blue silhouette rushed out like a rocket. Several bang sounds were heard. Several warriors were thrown into the air like silk balls. Then, they glided in the sky. A black-clothed and masked figure stood in the middle of the field. He stretched out his hand, and grabbed Zhao Wutian's neck. Then, he lifted him up. It seemed as if he was lifting a little chick. Zhao Wutian's limbs were powerlessly struggling in the air. His face had turned purple. Speak! Where are those crossbows? A blue light flickered on the masked man's body. His fingers gradually tightened. A tyrannical and cold light flashed in his eyes. Kill! Loud shouts were heard from all around. 30 or 40 people brandished their swords. They didn't care about Zhao Wutian's life or death. Zhao Wuji became anxious. He shouted, "Be careful of my second brother." Another excited roar was heard from the pitch-black mountain forest. Then, another black-clothed and masked man's body flashed with a blue light. His left hand was holding a sword, and his right hand was holding a sword. The previous black-clothed and masked man, Lengleng, looked at Zhao Wutian who was struggling in her hand. Her voice didn't carry the slightest trace of emotion. "You'll die if you don't speak. Don't tell me that you're in a carriage. I don't believe in such a childish lie. You'll only have one end if you dare to deceive me. Die." At. Zhao Wutian's legs were flailing in disorder. His eyes were filled with fear. Suddenly, a yellow light flashed, and Zhao Wutian let out a blood-curdling screech. He twitched twice, and then stopped moving. "Scoundrel," the black-clothed man cursed. Then, he turned around and pounced. The caravan of nearly 500 people from the 3 sides fell into chaos. Zhao Wuji let out a mournful howl amidst the chaos. "Second brother." Suddenly, he pounced towards a warrior in embroidered robes. You actually killed my second brother." This embroidered soldier was the leader of the Second Prince's Divine Wind Guards, Zhang Xiyuan Shao. However, he became even angrier as he faced Zhao Wuji's questioning. His face turned red as he roared in a stern voice, "Zhao Wuji, do you dare to spoil the Second Master's great plan? Your younger brother is greedy for life and afraid of death. He would have already divulged the secret if I had acted a little later. So, it's a matter of course for me to kill him. Your Zhao clan will be beheaded if he divulges the secret and spoils the great plan. You idiot." Chapter 309. A loud shout came from the sky, "Senior brother, we might as well kill all of these people. Then, we'll look for those crossbows. They must be among their belongings. Don't tell me that they're going to fly to the sky." A figure flashed with a blue light as he flew out horizontally. The blue light of the sword in his hand flashed for several meters as he appeared, and gave rise to a series of pitiful screams. He broke through the crowd, and cut open a path of death. Blood swirled in the air as he charged towards the center of the crowd. Zhang Xiyuan Shao shouted, "Everyone form a circle, and form an iron bucket killing formation. Let's fight the enemy together." All the warriors responded to his command, and quickly moved towards the center. Shouts of "kill" could be heard everywhere. They couldn't resist the 3 Tian Xian experts, but they were gradually able to stabilize their position. There was a towering tree. There was no one there, but a faint sigh could be heard. It was Jun Dashao who was hiding in that tree. Jun Dashao shook his head as he watched the fight below. He was speechless at these three people who had appeared out of nowhere. They're so unprofessional at robbing. I really don't know how Lei Wu Bei trained them. Jun Mo's eyesight had allowed him to see that these three people were Lei Wu Bei's three remaining disciples. Acquaintances. They're too familiar. These three people can't do anything right, but they're good at spoiling things. They're typical good-for-nothings. It's a robbery. You came out without saying a word, and then attacked us. But you even said a few words before you attacked. This left Jun Moxie speechless. What a load of crap. Damn it, not only did you fail in your robbery, you even messed up the perfect plan that this young master had made. How much effort would I have put in? Fortunately, Lei Jianhong hadn't said, this mountain was opened by me, and this tree was planted by me. If you want to pass through, you'll have to pay for the road. Otherwise, Jun Mo would have been so irritated that he would have fallen down from the tree. Jun Moxie had brought his guards here a day earlier. They dug traps and set up ambushes. In the end, Jun Moxie threw a pill to each of them to hide their aura. He arranged for more than 200 people to hide in the forest not far away. Naturally, they were all hiding in the underground caves that had been dug beforehand. Once this group of people entered the encirclement, he would immediately strike with lightning speed, then he would pack up his things and immediately escape. Who would have thought that before these people could enter the encirclement, they would be intercepted by the three hotheads and killed? This really makes me speechless. Jun Moxie quickly sent out a message, and told his men to stay calm and wait. He wanted to see what would happen next. It seemed that these three guys were very strong, but it wouldn't be easy for them to succeed. So, he decided to let them fight amongst themselves. Lei Jianhong was in the middle of his thoughts when he suddenly issued a low whistle. Then, a burst of orderly footsteps resounded. A large group of black-clothed, masked men rushed down from the mountain, and joined the battle circle in a flash. The deadlock between the two sides was broken in an instant. The leader of the Godly Wind Guard, Zhang Xiyuan Shao, was hit in the chest. He spouted a mouthful of blood, and was sent tumbling backwards. He shouted loudly, and flipped his hand. Then, a flaming arrow shot into the sky with a sharp whistling sound. It exploded with a bang, and a blood-red firework appeared in the night sky. It looked extremely lifelike. It seems that the Blood Sword sect has been hiding in the dark. Let's see who's stronger and who's weaker. In any case, I'll just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. I'll be the fisherman who reaps the benefits. Jun Moxie was squatting on the branch of a tree. The branch was moving up and down in the wind. It was very rhythmic. People might think that he was doing something secret with the tree if he were to reveal himself. Jun Dashao rested his chin on his hand, and waited with great interest. It's very lively. The disciples of the Blood Sword sect, Lei Wu Bei, and Li Yuren's secret experts are going to fiercely collide with each other. It's best if both sides win. Well, it would be best if both sides die. I've thought about it, but I don't have any extravagant hopes. Well, I'll just watch for now. I won't say anything. It was a pity that the subsequent outcome was completely beyond everyone's expectations. The Blood Sword sect's signal had been sent out for some time. But, not even a shadow of the Blood Sword sect's experts had arrived. The empty mountain was silent. Only the sounds of kill could be heard. Zhao Wuji and his men's faces were deathly pale under the illumination of the remaining flames. Their faces were full of despair. I thought that you had helpers behind you. But, it turned out to be an empty fort strategy. Lei Jianhong sneered. He then ridiculed, is this empty fort strategy very amusing? You're using such a shameful trick to show off in front of me. You're not playing with the enemy, you're playing with yourself. If you're really tired of living, then tell me. I'll help you. Zhao Wuji rolled away like a lazy donkey. He cut a sorry figure as he dodged the incoming blade. Then, He cried out, Commander Zhang. Commander Zhang, where are our reinforcements? Didn't you say that they've been following us? How? He had wanted to ask, how come there's no movement? But, the opponent in front of him slashed his blade 3 times in a row. He was in a hurry to dodge, and his words were interrupted 3 times in a row. It sounded like he was stuttering. How should I know? Do you think I'm not worried? Zhang Xiyuan Shao cursed, you should take care of your own life first. At present, the Li family's elite warriors were under the command of 3 Sky Xian experts. They had already gained an overwhelming advantage over the enemy. Under the pressure, Zhao Wuji's forces were gradually compressed into a very small circle. Zhao Wuji's 100-odd men were lucky enough to survive. They had formed a defensive line with great difficulty. They had formed a circle, and were doing their utmost to resist the enemy's storm-like attacks. No one was left alive outside the circle. Meng Xiaosong, Zhao Wuji, and Zhang Xiyuan Shao were in the center of the circle. Their complexions were deathly pale. It had been almost an incense stick's worth of time since the signal had been sent. But, there was still no trace of the Blood Sword Hall's reinforcements. Meng Xiaosong couldn't help but curse. His voice had a sobbing tone to it, what's going on? How can someone so brazenly attack the imperial bodyguards in the capital's territory? I say, sir, this lowly one has to take care of both the old and the young. It's not easy for me to follow you out this time. You should think of a solution quickly. You're the local tyrant of the capital. You should pay attention. Meng Xiaosong's Xian cultivation was very high. He had already reached the middle level of the Earth Xian realm. He was the strongest expert in Zhao Wuji's group. However, he had lived like a prince for many years. So, he had lost his iron-blooded murderous aura. Now, he cherished his life even more. Even if there was a great opportunity for him to be promoted and make a fortune, he still needed to be alive. He was already complaining in his heart when he saw the urgency of the situation. It was too late for regrets. I've been drinking tea at home, fighting birds, walking dogs, bullying commoners, and seizing a girl. I've been blinded by lard in order to earn those 50,000 silver taels. But, I haven't even gotten my hands on the money. Instead, I'm going to lose my life here. Zhang Xiyuan Shao couldn't help but get angry. What nonsense are you shouting for? The morale of our troops is in chaos. But, you're still shouting for us. You're disturbing our morale and scattering our fighting spirit. Shut up. Do you believe that I won't chop you into pieces with my saber if you keep shouting? Meng Xiaosong couldn't help but get angry when he heard this. He used his saber to protect his body as he angrily shouted, what kind of reasoning is this? You're the imperial bodyguards, the emperor's personal attendants, and the government officials. We're just a group of ants. We've followed you out to deliver goods. But, we're about to lose our lives. And, you're putting on airs in front of me. You won't even let me speak. He didn't wait for Zhang Xiyuan Shao to reply. Instead, he suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, help me. Help me. His Xian cultivation was profound. In fact, he was only second to Lei Jianhong and the other 2 Tian Xian experts. Moreover, he had been holed up in the rear since the beginning of the battle. So, he hadn't sustained even the slightest injury on his body. So, his shout had shaken the surrounding area, and had spread far and wide. Jun Mo Xia, who was still on the branch, almost fell head first. Boss, you're still an Earth Xian expert. Even though you can't be ranked in the whole world, but you're still a high-ranking person in your area. Why are you so afraid of death? The black-masked Lei Jianhong couldn't help but stagger. Then, he burst into loud laughter and shouted in a sinister manner, shout! Shout! Shout louder! It's useless even if you shout until your throat is broken. No one will come to save you. Jun Moxie was left speechless. His whole body trembled violently. He felt a strong urge to faint. Oh, God! Let me die. How could I actually hear such a classic phrase in this world at this time? Meng Xiaosong's shout for help was probably because he was afraid of death. But, Lei Jianhong's words were indeed famous. In a trance, Jun Moxie seemed to see a sinister and wretched man facing a weak little girl in a secluded alley. Then, he laughed complacently, shout. Shout even if you shout until your throat is broken. That trance scene was a bit melodramatic. But, it couldn't be compared to what was happening in front of him. A man was talking to another man in front of him. Jun Moxie swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to vomit. It's too disgusting. The situation on the scene was still in full swing. Zhao Wuji had brought the Zhao family's troops with him. Almost all of Meng Xiaosong's Southern Trade Union's members had died. It had to be admitted that the second prince's 200 divine storm guards were of the highest quality. 8 or 9 out of 10 of the surviving 150 people were members of the divine storm guards. In fact, the strength of the divine storm guards couldn't be considered very high. In fact, they were slightly inferior to the men of the Zhao family and the Southern Trade Union. However, they were very experienced in battle. So, they were able to hold their ground even if they fell into a disadvantageous position. Moreover, they were very good at fighting together. Their teamwork was very strong. Therefore, the Zhao family and the Southern Trade Union had a formidable advantage in this pitch-black night. As for the people of the Zhao clan and the Jiangnan Trade Union, they were much stronger than the people of the Divine Storm Guard. But, each and every one of them were used to acting alone. They were Jianghu people who rarely cooperated with others. Therefore, once they encountered such a large-scale chaotic battle, they would only rely on their own strength to kill. Therefore, the first to lose their lives were the experts who were stronger, but lacked the spirit of cooperation. Lei Jianhong and the other 2 men were attacking from 3 different directions. It was obvious that they were getting impatient. After all, this place was too close to the capital. The consequences could be big or small if the news were to leak out. I'm very ashamed that I've been disqualified from accompanying you to your bed. Woo, it's like this. I took a nap the day before yesterday. Then, I stayed up all night. I didn't sleep yesterday either. I went to the hospital after my outburst. Then, I was very sleepy. So, I unknowingly fell asleep on the hospital bed. My younger brother wanted to go to the toilet in the middle of the night. He kept calling me. But, I didn't wake up. He couldn't move. So, he finally couldn't bear it any longer, and fell asleep. I was berated by the nurses and doctors this morning. My younger brother was filled with grief and indignation. He pointed at me and said, "Get lost." I apologized in every possible way. But, it was to no avail. So, I was gloriously laid off. Sigh. As a punishment, I paid for a special nurse from my own pocket. Chapter 310. Today's second update. Asking for monthly votes. Suddenly, a dazzling blue light blazed in the midst of the chaotic battle. Lei Jianhong and his sword had transformed into a blue tornado, and had appeared at a rapid speed. Then, they smashed into the defensive circle of the Divine Wind Guards with a bang sound. A loud explosion was heard. More than a dozen members of the Divine Wind Guard were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and were sent flying upside down. Lei Jianhong didn't neglect this attack. He lowered his body, and drew a large circle with his sword wrapped in azure xian qi. At least 7 or 8 people were cut in half at the waist by this sword attack. Lei Jianhong was fighting with all his might in an attempt to open a gap. His old strength had been exhausted, and he hadn't yet recovered. Zhang Zuanxiao and the other members of the Divine Storm Guard quickly filled the gap. Moreover, more than 30 swords and blades simultaneously chopped down on Lei Jianhong's body. Lei Jianhong didn't have enough time to catch his breath. He swung his sword a dozen or so times in a defensive position. However, he had already reached the realm of Tianxian. So, he was able to hold his ground even though he was fighting against so many enemies. Lei Jianhong raised his Xian Qi, and let out a loud roar. His tyrannical sword power reappeared, and dozens of people fell to the ground with serious injuries. Lei Jianhong had broken through the encirclement with his powerful attack. However, he had exerted his Xian Qi in order to resist the enemy's attack. And, this had injured his vitality. Moreover, he had been stabbed by dozens of swords and blades. Tianxian's skin was as hard as iron, and hadn't sustained any injuries. However, his clothes hadn't been spared. His clothes had been torn to shreds, and looked like the clothes of a beggar. He then turned around, and withdrew from the battle. Lei Jianhong only needed to regulate his breathing for a moment, and he would be able to restore his energy to its original state. However, the result of Lei Beihong's powerful attack was very shocking. The gap on this side had been completely opened. The elite guards of the Li family shouted in unison, and rushed in like a tide. In the other two directions, the other two Tianxian experts also adopted a similar method to create a gap. For a moment, the Divine Wind Guards, who were originally well defended, were exposed, and their formation was thrown into chaos. Lei Jianhong and the other two had been saving their strength to deal with the experts of the Blood Sword sect. But, those people hadn't arrived yet. So, it was assumed that they didn't have any backup. Therefore, the three of them felt relieved, and decided to end this battle as quickly as possible. So, they displayed their true strength at the same time. They didn't even hesitate to consume their Xian Qi. They were like tigers in a flock of sheep, and started a massacre. Man Mang, don't kill me. I'm the vice president of the Jiangnan Trade Union. I surrender. A mournful cry pierced through the blue dome of heaven. It was Meng Xiaosong. The vice president of the Jiangnan Trade Union could no longer resist the fear in his heart and his desire to live, so he proposed to surrender. Zhou Jianming, Lei Wu Bei's second disciple, stood in front of him without any hesitation. Meng Xiaosong was about to chop down with his sword without any hesitation. But, he hadn't expected that his only worthy opponent would kneel down with a plop sound. Tears and snot streamed down his face as he said, "Let me go. Hero, have pity on me. I have a 100-year-old mother at home, and a young child who is crying piteously for food." Meng Xiaosong's tears streamed down his face as he said, "Hero, boo-hoo-hoo. I don't want to die." Zhou Jianming was stunned. He hadn't expected that there would be such a cowardly and shameless person in this world. He's kneeling down in front of the two armies. And, he's the vice president of the Jiangnan Trade Union. Isn't this too shameful? There's no such thing as the most shameless person, only more shameless. Shamelessness has no limits, Fu*K. Get up, you coward. As long as you tell me where those crossbows are, I'll let you live. Zhou Jianming glared angrily and shouted. Yes, those crossbows. Meng Xiaosong rolled his eyes. I would have told you if I knew. In all honesty, how would I know where they kept the crossbows? Isn't this going to take my old life? I really don't know. Hurry up. Fu*K. Why are you rolling your eyes, you coward? Do you want to die? Hurry up and tell me. Zhou Jianming shouted. Hero, spare my life. I'm useless. I really don't know where those crossbows are stored. Meng Xiaosong was terrified and scared. He banged his head on the ground with a bang sound. I'll fuck your mother. What's the use of surrendering then? You're useless. I'll fuck you, you coward. Zhou Jianming opened his eyes wide. Then, he raised his foot, and kicked Meng Xiaosong's belly with a bang. Meng Xiaosong was sent flying more than 10 feet away from the ground. Zhou Jianming felt extremely depressed. This coward doesn't know anything, and he wants to surrender, really. Meng Xiaosong was still shouting in the air, spare. The word life hadn't left his mouth when his voice suddenly stopped. A blood-red swordlight had appeared in the air. It had easily cut his body in half. Then, its speed hadn't decreased, and it continued to shoot towards Zhou Jianming. Meng Xiaosong's body had been cut in half, and blood had rained down from the sky. A blood-red silhouette had emerged from the rain of blood. It had pierced through. With lightning speed, a streamer had flashed, and had chopped Zhou Jianming's leg. He hadn't yet retracted it. It had been cut in half like a sharp knife cutting tofu. This person's timing is extremely precise. Even Jun Moxie, who was far away on the tree branch, couldn't help but praise him in his heart. I wouldn't be able to do a better job than this person even if I personally attacked him. The level of this sneak attack has been brought to the point of perfection. It has reached the pinnacle. This person had chosen to attack when Meng Xiaosong had surrendered, and Zhou Jianming's hostility had dissipated. Then, he had angrily kicked Meng Xiaosong. When Meng Xiaosong's body had flown to a certain height, Zhou Jianming, Meng Xiaosong, and the assassins' bodies were in an oblique straight line. This had blocked Zhou Jianming's line of sight. It was like a person's eyes. Even if a small leaf had covered his eyes, he wouldn't be able to see the entire forest. This was the so-called, a leaf can't blind the eyes. However, the assassin in the blood-red clothes had suddenly attacked at this extremely subtle point. He had followed the blinding, straight line at a very fast speed. He had pierced through Meng Xiaosong's body, and had gone straight towards Zhou Jianming. Zhou Jianming was depressed and angry at this time. His vigilance was at its lowest. His sword had succeeded. The assassin's Xian Qi cultivation was at the same level as Zhou Jianming. However, his true strength was at most on par with Zhou Jianming. In fact, he might even be slightly weaker than Zhou Jianming. If the two of them had faced each other head-on, the best result would have been that both of them would have been injured. The assassin would have only been able to inflict some minor injuries if he hadn't chosen such a clever timing. However, he had managed to chop off one of Zhou Jianming's legs. Ah! Zhou Jianming screamed in pain as he saw his right leg being chopped off. His blood spurted out like a fountain. Zhou Jianming let out a blood-curdling scream. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He raised his head in pain. However, the assassin in the blood-red clothes hadn't relaxed at all. He had successfully chopped off Zhou Jianming's leg with his long sword. Then, he took advantage of the opportunity to cut off Zhou Jianming's right leg from the middle. Zhou Jianming screamed miserably. His voice didn't sound like a human's. He instinctively leapt backwards. However, he had forgotten that his leg had been chopped off. So, he didn't leap out. Instead, he fell backwards. The assassin's elbows were like two sledgehammers that were emitting blue light. They ruthlessly pounded on Zhou Jianming's chest. Zhou Jianming's ribs were broken with several cracking sounds. Zhou Jianming's voice sounded like a dying beast's groan. Blood gushed out of his mouth along with his crushed internal organs. The mask covering his face was long gone. His rough face was twisted like the roots of a tree. His veins were twisting and popping out. The assassin's eyes were cold and cruel. He didn't intend to let Zhou Jianming go. He grabbed his knees with both hands and lifted them up like a thunderbolt. His left leg had just landed, but his right leg had already risen up. He kept pounding on Zhou Jianming's crotch. His elbows were still pounding on Zhou Jianming's chest. His hands were clasped together. They were glowing with a dazzling blue light as they struck Zhou Jianming's temples. Bang! Zhou Jianming's 7 orifices turned into fountains. It was a fountain of blood. His feet moved up and down as he continued to strike Zhou Jianming's body from different directions. He had already brought Zhou Jianming's body several hundred feet away in the blink of an eye. Zhou Jianming had to bear the brunt of his crazy attacks during this process. Zhou Jianming's tall and sturdy body had turned into a pile of rotten meat when it finally came to a stop. Zhou Jianming's tall and sturdy body had turned into a pile of rotten meat. He had turned into a pile of rotten meat from head to toe. His body had withered from head to toe. There wasn't a single sound. Every single bone in his body had turned into powder. He had bumped into many people along the way. Their bones had been smashed by the crazy impact force, and had been sent flying. Second brother. Second brother. Two heartrending cries of grief and indignation were heard. Lei Jianhong and the third sister Fang Piaohong were so angry that they felt as if their eyes were going to pop out of their sockets. However, it was already too late. Zhou Jianming had already turned into a pile of minced meat. He didn't even have the slightest bit of breath left. He was thoroughly dead. Blood Sword Sect. Who are you? Lei Jianhong's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at that blood-red silhouette. Elder Lei has excellent eyesight. I'm a nobody from the Blood Sword Sect. I've long heard of the great names of the two Tianxian experts. It's a great honor to meet you today. That man in blood-red clothes chuckled. He slowly wiped the minced meat and bones off his hands. He then turned around and said with a smile, I wanted to say that I've long heard of the great names of the three Tianxian experts. But, second brother has already turned into dregs. So, I have no choice but to speak of the two of you. I hope the two Tianxian experts won't blame me for my lack of manners. Chapter 311. Today's breakout. First update. Asking for monthly votes. Monthly votes. Brothers and sisters, we are only one step away from the top 10. Everyone give me strength. Rush up. I ask you, who are you? Tell me your name if you have the guts. Lei Jianhong's entire body was trembling. His voice was low and intimidating. He didn't pay any attention to the man's taunts. He didn't even glance at his junior brother's corpse. Fang Piaohong's eyes were fixed on her second senior brother's corpse. Her entire body was trembling, and she couldn't utter a single word. The intense battle in the field suddenly came to a halt. Zhao Wuji and the others were rejoicing that they had escaped from death. They didn't care about the fact that the other party had arrived so late. It doesn't matter if he's early or late, as long as he's here. Isn't protecting our own lives more important than anything else? Everyone had stopped fighting, but the atmosphere in the field was getting more and more oppressive. The man in red chuckled. He suddenly raised his hand, and his sleeve made a crisp sound in the air. It was clear that he had hit nothing, but it seemed as if he had hit something solid. A slight sound was heard all around. Suddenly, dozens of silhouettes appeared in all directions. Under the illumination of the fire, these people were all dressed in red, and they stood quietly without moving. However, their eyes were flashing with a cold and frightening light. It seemed as if they were a pack of bloodthirsty wolves waiting for their king's command. The two silhouettes slowly drifted forward, and arrived at the side of the red-robed man. Then, they faced Lei Jianhong and Fang Piaohong. The blue radiance on their bodies shone softly, but it gave Lei Jianhong and the others a strong visual impact. These three men were Tianxian's powerhouses. They looked around, and saw that there were 10 or so Earth Xian experts present. The rest of them were covered in the misty blue color of Yuxian. There were 30 or 40 of them. Lei Jianhong's heart suddenly turned cold. It was ice cold. How can we fight this battle? The enemy's strength is far above mine. My third junior sister and I are the only ones left on our side. My name? Ha, Master Lei, it's not your first day out here. I am an assassin of the Blood Sword Sect, how can I tell you my name? Even if I don't care about you too, I'll still care about Lei Wu Bei. As for whether I have the guts or not, you might as well ask your second brother. He'll know very clearly. The red-robed man tilted his head as he replied to Lei Jianheng's question. Very good. Lei Jianheng looked at them with grief and indignation. Then, he turned around, Sister, let's go. Wait. The red-clothed man suddenly shouted. Lei Jianheng stopped in his tracks. What? Don't tell me you still want to keep us here. Lei Jianheng laughed miserably, your strength is far above ours, and we're no match for you in a direct confrontation. But, do you think you have the strength to keep us here? Lei Jianheng was right. The top experts of both sides were on the same level as Tian Xian. It wouldn't be difficult for the Bloodsword sect to defeat Lei Jianheng's side. But, it would be impossible for them to keep Lei Jianheng and Fang Piaohong here. As long as the two of them wanted to leave, they could kill their way out at any time and escape far away. Haha, Brother Lei has misunderstood my good intentions. Brother Lei is the only descendant of the cold-blooded master. So, we wouldn't dare to offend you. The red-robed man spoke slowly, but, don't you want to take away second master's corpse? Do you want to leave his corpse in the wilderness? Lei Jianheng snorted coldly, but didn't reply. Instead, he suddenly stood up, and grabbed Fang Piaohong's hand. He didn't even bother to say a single word. Instead, he jumped up and down on a branch, and disappeared into the night sky. Lei Jianheng understood that he wouldn't be able to escape if he carried Zhou Jianming's corpse. The red-robed man's words were obviously filled with evil intentions. He wanted to keep his sister and him here to avoid future troubles. In fact, the enmity between the two sides had already been established. So, there was no room for negotiation between the two sides. The opposite party would use extreme measures to keep them here as long as he showed that he wanted second brother's corpse. So what if his father was the cold-blooded master? Don't forget, if the two of them really died here, and the Li family's guards were all killed in one fell swoop, then there would truly be no witnesses. At that time, even if his father wanted to seek revenge, he wouldn't be able to find any enemies. And, the opposite party obviously had the strength to do so. Therefore, he made a prompt decision, and immediately flew away. Lei Jianheng's judgment was correct. The opposite party knew that there was no point in intercepting him, so they didn't try to stop him. Suddenly, a milky white mist rose up in the hazy light of the night, and slowly shrouded the entire area. The mist was getting thicker and thicker, and gradually seemed to form a thin barrier. This kind of mist always rose up in the mountain forest in the early morning. So, no one paid attention to it. Moreover, there was a burst of fresh mountain air amidst this mist. It was so refreshing that everyone couldn't help but take a few deep breaths. Suddenly, their spirits were roused. However, Jun Mo Xia had come down from the tree at some point in time, and he sighed deeply. What a pity. It's a pity that Lei Jianheng and the others left too early. They would have been wiped out if they had stayed for a little longer. It's a pity that the ecstasy fragrance that I had painstakingly concocted has slipped through the net. The ecstasy fragrance wasn't suitable to be used during the previous battle. The powerful Xian Qi would have blown away the ecstasy fragrance in the blink of an eye, and wouldn't have had any effect. Therefore, Jun Moxie had decided to use this trump card now that the situation had stabilized. The ecstasy fragrance had been refined using the heaven and earth aura of the Hongjun Pagoda. It was almost invisible and traceless. There was still a little smell. Moreover, it was a very refreshing and elegant smell. However, anyone who smelled this elegant smell would unknowingly lose their ability to resist it. Even a Xian Qi expert would experience a drop in their Xian Qi after inhaling a certain amount of the ecstasy fragrance. Their fighting strength would also be greatly reduced. This was Jun Moxie's biggest trump card in this operation. You have finally arrived. Zhang Xiyuan Zhao's body was covered in injuries. He limped over to greet them. Zhao Wuji was also at his side. He looked at these red-clothed people with eyes full of fear, but they were also mixed with infinite flattery. Ah, there was an accident earlier. So, we were delayed for a while. The red-clothed man nodded expressionlessly and said, "Where are the crossbows?" Zhang Xiyuan Zhao looked at Zhao Wuji. Zhao Wuji understood his meaning, and led everyone to the front of the carriages. However, they didn't enter the carriages. Instead, they came to the side of the horses that were pulling the carriages. They first removed the saddle from the horses' bodies. Then, they used their hands to untie a long and almost transparent leather belt from the horses' bodies. Then, they untied it round after round. Finally, they took out a thin piece of fur from the horses' bellies. Then, they made a crashing sound, and dozens of sparkling and translucent crossbows fell to the ground. Zhao Wuji had tied the crossbows here. This scheming is indeed unexpected. It's really amazing. Even if a thief wanted to rob the carriages, they would have searched the carriages at most. If the carriages weren't found, they would have gone in another direction to search. Who would have cared about the horses that were pulling the carriages? There are a total of 350 crossbows. That's 20 more than expected. They've been sent here. The original blueprints have also been burned. There are 20 crossbows tied to the bellies of each horse. The rest of the horses are carrying a total of 7,000 crossbow bolts. This is only the first batch of crossbow bolts. The second batch is still being manufactured. Zhao Wuji said in fear and trepidation. He lowered his head and bowed. He didn't know why, but he felt that the red-clothed man in front of him was overflowing with cold air. It seemed as if the red-clothed man was very dissatisfied with him. Very good. You've completed your task well, the red-clothed man said in a gratified manner. I'll allow you to have a good rest. And, I'll give you a reward. Many thanks. Zhao Wuji was overjoyed. He bowed to express his thanks. But, his head suddenly fell to the ground with a bang before he could finish speaking. There was a flattering smile on his face, but, the red-clothed man had suddenly slashed down with his sword. Idiot. This was the red-clothed man's final comment. The reward I'm giving you is to let you reunite with your second brother. You can rest forever in the underworld, the red-clothed man said in a sinister manner. Senior, what's wrong with you? Zhang Zuanxiao asked in surprise. But, the red-clothed man's palm had already landed on his head, and his brain had burst open. He struggled to speak before he died. Why? I thought that you would be clever. But, it turns out that you're also an idiot. Why are you asking me for the reason? The red-clothed man wiped the blood off his hand. He then smiled and said, You idiots really think that the Blood Sword Hall is cooperating with that stupid pig-like second prince? He doesn't deserve it. He suddenly waved his hand, and said in a stern voice, Attack. All the red-clothed men started to attack at the same time. They had intentionally or unintentionally approached the lucky survivors a moment ago. In fact, they had almost stood together with them. Those lucky survivors knew that their reinforcements had arrived, and that the shadow of death had dispersed. So, they felt relieved, and didn't have the slightest vigilance. The red-clothed leader had issued an order, and the situation had changed drastically. The lucky survivors had been turned upside down in an instant. They hadn't even had the time to think of resisting. They had already fallen to the ground while screaming in agony. The other group of red-clothed men had silently attacked the Li family's warriors who hadn't been taken away by Lei Jianhong and the others when they had left. These people had been led by the two Tianxian experts to attack the others earlier. So, they had gained the upper hand. But now, 3 Tianxian experts had led a group of Earth Xian and Yu Xian experts to attack them with all their might. The situation had been completely reversed. They had been in despair ever since Lei Jianhong and his companion had left. So, they couldn't muster the slightest courage to resist at this time. So, they had been killed in an instant. Only the dozens of red-clothed men were left on the field at this moment. Their fighting strength was tyrannical. No one had been injured in this round of killing. The white fog between the mountains had become even thicker. Check as soon as possible. Confirm which horse has a crossbow. Pack it up, and withdraw immediately. The leader of the red-clothed men hastily issued an order. He, it's finally my turn. I've been waiting for a long time. But, you haven't fought fiercely enough. Not many people have died. This makes me very unhappy. An illusory laughter was suddenly heard. It came from the left, the right, the front, and the back. It was ever-changing and unfathomable. He then said, "The Blood Sword Hall is really awesome. I'm sincerely convinced and impressed. But, your Blood Sword Hall isn't working for the second prince. So, who are you working for? Or perhaps I should ask, who has such great charisma that it's worth working for? I'm very interested in it. Who? Who's playing tricks on us? Come out." The red-clothed man shouted as he looked around. "Humph. I'm your father, so I'm your father." The man in the shadow smiled wretchedly. He suddenly burst into laughter. "Good son, quickly kneel down and kowtow to welcome your biological father. You're courting death." The red-clothed man was furious. He listened carefully for a moment. Then, he suddenly leaped up. A blue sword light shot out like a long dragon. The sword light rumbled a few times, and several big trees were cut in half. They fell down like a landslide, and the ground was split open. Dust flew everywhere. How is this possible? The red-clothed man, who had just displayed his invincible might and killed an expert of the same level, suddenly cried out in shock. He was shocked to find that his Tian Xian Qi was rapidly depleting. More than half of it had dissipated along with the sword attack just now. Ha, there are only things that can't be imagined in this world, but there is nothing that can't be done. Nothing is impossible. The mysterious man in the dark let out a long roar. Then, he suddenly shouted, "Do it!" There was a loud bang in the surroundings. There were a few places on the ground nearby that were overturned like waves. Sand and dirt flew everywhere like an explosion. A few sturdy figures quickly jumped out, and then, people rushed over from all directions. A light figure suddenly appeared in midair, and flew toward another Tian Xian expert at an extremely fast speed. The leader of the red-clothed man was shocked. He shouted, "Be careful." As soon as his voice fell, he saw a flash in front of him. A black-clothed and masked figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It turned out that this person's real target was actually him. In great shock, he quickly dodged backward. At the same time, he raised his long sword and was about to attack. But that person followed him like a shadow. He took the initiative to attack first. A cold light flashed, and he stabbed at the red-clothed man's throat. This cold light was extremely fast. Even with the eyesight of the red-clothed man, he couldn't even see clearly what kind of weapon it was. He already felt a cold piercing pain in his throat. The red-clothed man didn't have time to pull out his sword and retreat again. But, he felt a gust of wind on his lower body. A knee fiercely hit his crotch. The red-clothed man was shocked. He raised his buttocks and dodged a foot away like lightning. He was glad that he had avoided this fatal attack. But, he was shocked to see another flash of cold light, which was aimed at his eyes. He used all his remaining strength to retreat to the side. He felt a piercing pain on his face. He knew that the person's sharp weapon had cut through his skin. At the same time, there was a loud bang on his chest. The enemy's elbows had smashed into his chest. He felt a piercing pain in his lower body. The red-clothed man was angry and angry. He was in pain and fear. These were the methods that he had used to deal with Zhou Jianming. His opponent had almost copied them all. But, at this time, their roles had been switched. He was the one being attacked. Moreover, this person's speed was even more ruthless and precise than his own. Chapter 312. What frightened him the most was that his Xian Qi was gradually disappearing, and his Dantian was in chaos. Not to mention that he didn't have the time to fight back. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to do anything to the opponent with his current strength. The opponent's speed was too fast. Not to mention that he was in a state of panic. Profound Qi was the only thing he could rely on, but now, this only thing he could rely on had disappeared. He had even forgotten to circulate his Xian Qi to protect his body, and was simply taking a beating. Bang! The man in red's crotch was hit, and before he could even cry out, he received another heavy blow on the back of his head. He staggered 2 steps forward, only to find that the enemy was already waiting in front of him. In a split second, his body bore the brunt of countless punches and kicks like a storm. This person's speed was like that of a ghost, and the man in red felt that every part of his body was being beaten at the same time. Moreover, every part of his body was enough to kill a person. This person's understanding of the human body had reached an extremely high level. It seemed as if he was hitting randomly, but every hit was aimed at the most uncomfortable part, which was also the most taboo for a martial artist. The man in red's consciousness was already fuzzy, and the only thought in his mind was, this person is even more proficient in the art of killing than the people of my blood sword hall. Who is this person? The other 2 Tianxian assassins were shocked to see this change, and roared in anger as they rushed forward to help. However, as soon as they raised their Xian Qi, they discovered a sad reality. They didn't know when their strength had dissipated by more than half, and they knew that they had been poisoned. In a state of panic, they no longer cared about rescuing their companions, and instead worked hard to circulate the remaining Xian Qi in their bodies, hoping to force the poison out, and restore their strength. However, as they circulated their Xian Qi, the remaining Xian Qi dissipated faster and faster. How could they not be alarmed? While they were inexplicably panic-stricken, many people who were hidden in the surroundings suddenly appeared like ghosts, and rushed over at a high speed. Each person's body was flashing with a brilliant golden light. They had no qualms about charging towards the Earth Xian experts, Yu Xian experts, and even Tian Xian experts who were much stronger than them. They held their swords in their hands and slashed at them. It was as if they didn't care about the experts at all. They only cared about a herd of cattle and sheep waiting to be slaughtered. In fact, the highest cultivation of this new batch of enemies was only at the peak of the Gold Xian realm. If they hadn't been poisoned, these red-clothed assassins would have thought that these people weren't even comparable to cattle or sheep waiting to be slaughtered. At best, they would have been nothing more than a bunch of ants. One should know that the lowest cultivation among these assassins was Yu Xian. But at this moment, the tables had turned. Now, in the face of these black-robed men, the existences that were usually like ants had directly transformed into the king of hell. The overbearing ecstasy fragrance had caused their cultivations to fall to the same level as the enemies in front of them. Moreover, their cultivations were still falling rapidly. Everyone was extremely terrified of this fact, and they no longer had any will to fight. The ecstasy fragrance had completely crushed the will to fight of these so-called cold-blooded assassins. When a powerhouse lost his pride and the powerful combat strength he relied on to survive, his mentality might even be worse than an ordinary person's. Everyone was only thinking of escaping, and they were like a swarm of bees in an instant. On the contrary, the group of Gold Xian experts were full of vigor, and didn't seem to fear death. These 2 groups of people collided like volcanoes erupting in the span of 1 or 2 breaths' time. The faces of this group of men were cold and expressionless. Compared to the unusually cold-blooded assassins in front of them, the expressions on their faces at this moment were more like those of the cruelest and most cold-blooded assassins. Faced with the chaotic and disorderly attacks of the enemy, they didn't dodge or evade. Instead, they stubbornly charged forward, using their shoulders and chests to resist the enemy's attacks, and at the same time, sending their weapons into the enemy's body. It was almost as if they were trading their lives for their lives, and exchanging injuries for their lives. This was an extremely cruel method of fighting. If they were cruel enough to themselves, then they would be even more cruel to their enemies. The battle broke out quickly, but it ended even more quickly. It seemed as if the battle was already half over after a single collision. This was because the assassins who were slashed by this group of men would instantly turn black as soon as their skin was cut. Then, they would stop breathing, and lose their lives. The weapons of this group of people were smeared with an incomparably overbearing poison. Even an Earth Xian expert wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of lethal poison for a short period of time. This was the stockpile of poison that Jun Moxie had accumulated when he had forced the poison out of Jun Wui's body. However, it had come in handy at this moment. These people's swords had been soaked in this poison for a night. This poison was a mixture of dozens of different poisons in the world, and could be said to be lethal upon contact. More than 200 men split up into groups of 4 or 5 to deal with one person. The leader would act as a meat shield, and would use his body to resist the enemy's attacks. Then, the remaining 3 or 4 people would swarm forward, and would tear the enemy's body to shreds in a split second. Even if the Earth Xian experts were able to resist for a while, they would still be quickly corroded by the poison, and would die in a split second. This scene was witnessed by the 2 Tian Xian experts who were using all their strength to force out the poison. Even the calm Tian Xian experts couldn't help but twitch their eyebrows, and break out in a cold sweat. Are these people still human? This group of people don't take their own lives, don't they take the lives of their companions as something important? Even if risking one's life on the battlefield is understandable, but this is too unskillful, and too barbaric, isn't it? An Earth Xian assassin's blade had pierced through the shoulder, and the back of the blade had almost sunk in. It was almost certain that this was a fatal injury. If the assassin had used just a little more strength, he would have been cut in half. However, this guy didn't even frown, and even fiercely twisted his shoulder, and firmly stuck the blade that had pierced into his body. Then, the other people who had rushed forward with him roared, and dismembered the Earth Xian expert in front of them into minced meat in a split second. Another person had clearly been pierced through the abdomen by a long sword. This was a fatal injury, but he still had an expressionless face, and even used both his hands to firmly lock the edge of the long sword in front of his abdomen. His other hand had grabbed the red-robed Earth Xian assassin's wrist, and he had a sinister smile on his face. At the same time, a large blade and a long sword fell from his side, and another pile of minced meat was turned into minced meat, and then, this group of people. They were even more desperate than the desperados. Desperados were at best fighting with their lives on the line, and they would still be afraid and cowardly at the critical juncture of life and death. However, these burly men had completely disregarded death, and had even brought death to their opponents. 15 Earth Xian assassins, and 40 blood-clothed assassins of Yu Xian's level, had all been annihilated in the blink of an eye. What was even more cruel was that not a single one of these 55 people had been able to preserve their corpses. Every corpse had been disfigured beyond recognition, and they were even more miserable than the previous Zhou Jianming. Originally, this was understandable for an assassin. After all, the best way to confirm a person's death was to dismember their corpse. However, understanding was one thing, but witnessing it with their own eyes, and witnessing so many dismembered corpses to take their lives, one could well imagine the shock they felt. The 2 Tian Xian assassins suddenly had a feeling that they had encountered a pack of wolves when they had entered the Tian Fa forest in search of medicine. And, this group of people in front of them was even more frightening than a pack of wolves. This kind of surging murderous intention, murderous intent, and murderous aura, how could it be limited to the category of an assassin? Even the bloodiest and cruelest Xian beasts in the Tian Fa forest might not be able to do this. Finally, it was followed by an extremely despairing scream. It was extremely miserable, and it was also extremely indignant. However, it stopped abruptly. The two men turned their heads to look, and saw that their leader, the Tian Xian assassin who had just killed Zhou Jianming, had both his arms chopped off. His mouth, eyes, and nose had all been smashed into horrifying bloody holes before they could even land on the ground. The two men turned their heads to look, and saw that their leader's body had been kicked high into the air with a bang sound. Then, a series of frenzied blows rained down on his throat, heart, crotch, head, and other vital points. The two men could clearly see that none of the blows had gone beyond the range of these vital points. They had been able to maintain such precision under such intensive attacks. Just this point alone was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. Not only because of the precision of the technique, but also because of the cruelty and cold-bloodedness. As long as one or half of those vital points had been hit, it would have been enough to be fatal. Yet, the attacker had attacked in such a manner. It was obvious that he had done it to shock them. Finally, with a cracking sound that made one's teeth ache, the scene stopped moving. That Tian Xian assassin, who had been majestic just now, had turned into a complete, human stick. The right hand of the black-clothed masked man in front of him was stretched out straight, and his fist had easily pierced through his chest. Then, it came out from his back. That tightly clenched fist was still holding a piece of broken heart. It was hanging in the air just like that. The two Tian Xian assassins had goosebumps all over their bodies. This could not be said to be cruel, or cold-bloodedness anymore. This was a pervert. A pervert who had surpassed the limits of human endurance. A pervert who had surpassed the limits of human endurance. This man was naturally Jun Moxie. Seeing that he couldn't drag on any longer, Jun Dashao naturally had to make the first move to gain the upper hand. But after he had made his move, he discovered something that made him feel depressed, extremely depressed, extremely depressed. Jun Moxie was the king of assassins of his generation, but he had never had the habit of abusing others. He had always paid attention to killing his opponent in a single blow. He had no choice but to kill his opponent, but he couldn't say it out loud. Even with the effect of the ecstasy fragrance, the enemy's strength had dropped to an unimaginable level. Even if the enemy didn't have the intention to fight, even if he had caught him unprepared from the start, and had been leading the fight with speed, but, the strength of a Tian Xian expert was too high. The young Master Jun had made rapid progress, and had reached the Jade Xian realm. But, there was still a huge disparity between him and the other party. The other party's bones wouldn't have been able to be found under such a concentrated barrage of attacks. However, the guy in front of him had only let out a few painful howls. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.